I am going to return
to
the people from whence I came.
Hello, I'm Peter Mandelson, and I'm proud to serve as His Majesty's British Ambassador to the United States of America.
I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
The Ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Mandy's out 4 decades and 3 scandals, or 3 that we know about. Guess what? Number 10 knew all about it. They knew that he lived in Jeffrey Epstein's flat.
Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party late last night over the allegation of this $75,000 set of payments to him from Epstein while he was business secretary, $10,000 to his now husband, a photo of him in his pants. This isn't just bad form. There are strong arguments here for him to be facing investigation over misconduct in public office.
I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Breaking news that Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt. This is the establishment, the British establishment on trial. Came to us around about 5 o'clock when we learned that we saw footage of Peter Mandelson being led out of his London home in very exclusive Regent's Park by 3 coppers.
Now we have all these allegations, we have all the documentation related to those allegations, which Downing Street is being forced to put out. The first tranche of it will be early next month.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good afternoon and welcome to Drive Time right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be your host for 3 thrilling hours of news, views and topical debate. Let's do it. All the way to 7 o'clock. Get on the show. Get it off your chest. Get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number, and I promise to play your message out. It is Wednesday, April the 1st. Here's what's coming up. April Fool's Day and another pathetic performance from our pound store Prime Minister as he continues to showcase all the leadership qualities of an incompetent worker ant. Starmer is clearly being told by the half-wits who surround him that he's weathered the storm, and his brilliant stance on not being invited to join the war is rallying the people behind him. Yeah, right. What did 2 tiers anodyne address to the nation amount to this morning? It was this. Let's rejoin the EU and then everything will be fine. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. That's all he wants to do is betray the Brexit vote and rejoin the Brussels gang. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, the storm surrounding the BBC's abysmal handling of the latest of its many paedophile scandals gets worse by the hour. The state broadcaster's famously useless bosses knew all about Scott Mills' police interview under caution 7 years ago over alleged historical serious sexual offences against a minor. This never resulted in charges or prosecution. The case was dropped. But why have the BBC bosses waited until now to sack him? Why has the bungling Beeb allowed this murky saga to descend into confusion and chaos? Why do the BBC's loser executives screw everything up every single time? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, they've sent out 49 million threatening letters warning us all to pay our £175 TV licences. Does this hopeless organisation deserve our money. 03444991000. In other news, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood agrees to hand the French £2 million a week to patrol their beaches and not stop the migrants as talks stall over another £500 million three-year deal. After the abject ineffectiveness of the last one, why bother? Why bother wasting taxpayers' money on handing buckets of money to the French when they don't do anything to stop the migrants? 37% of the boats and the migrants they've stopped over the past 3 years. 63% have just got through, and we gave them £500 million for that. Why? 0344 499 1000. In other news, a council takes illegal action to stop Patriots hanging Union Jacks and St George's Cross flags. Why? 0344 499 1000. And finally, the hunt for the elusive giant rat that escaped from a zoo 2 weeks ago and, despite many sightings, continues to evade capture. Where is Samba? 0344 499 1000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Wednesday afternoon together. And first up, for the first 20 minutes or so, let's spend it in the excellent company of political commentator Benedict Spence. Hi, Benedict.
Hey, Kev. How you doing?
I'm okay. The BBC, we still need to talk about this because it gets murkier by the moment. It's not really dwelling on the potential scandal surrounding Scott Mills and what actually happened, because clearly we don't know all the facts. Therein lies half the problem, I think. It is the way that the BBC deals with these scandals. I mean, you'd think after Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Stuart Hall, Hugh Edwards, that they'd really know how to handle a paedophile scandal, because Scott Mills stands accused of more than 25 years ago alleged serious sexual crimes against an underage boy, someone who was underage, under the age of 16. He denies that offence, and the police subsequently dropped the case, but they interviewed him 7 years ago, 2018, under caution about this historical offence, or offences. We don't know the details. Now, the BBC, to do with this scandal, or to this saga, sacked him on Tuesday, last Tuesday, summarily. So why did they do this? So until now, many of us have been assuming, well, obviously the BBC didn't really know about this. They've only found out a couple of weeks ago, and Scott Mills has had to go. Well, we learned today, thanks to the Sun newspaper and other publications as well, that the BBC knew all about this case 7 years ago, when Scott Mills, to his credit, told them about it. The case was dropped. So why are they firing him now, when they knew about this 7 years ago? Now, I ask these questions merely because the BBC is not answering them, and so in their time-honoured fashion, they are not being transparent. They are creating a kind of chaotic vacuum into which wild speculation is pouring. The issue here is not so much what Scott Mills may or may not have done. It is the way that, yet again, the BBC is making a massive mess of handling this crisis. Yet again. They're always doing this, and they've done it again. What is wrong with them, Benedict?
Well, you're right. I mean, the fact that they've made this decision without any sort of new information being put into the public sphere does create wild speculation. We can't help but do that. Obviously, you're sat there thinking, well, there must be some reason. They can't just be doing this so far after the fact. And all that this does is give the impression either of an organisation that has received information, but that information isn't currently forthcoming, so it's not acted on it, or one that doesn't actually know how to deal with these things. And as you said, just at the top there, it's not as if this is a new phenomenon for the BBC. They've had enough high-profile individuals caught up in these kinds of scandals before. And, I think it is important to say that, as you said, Scott Mills' sort of credit, if you like, he was forthcoming with the BBC, and, he hasn't been convicted of anything like that. But that, I'm afraid, then just begs the question, why is it that they've made this decision? If they'd made the decision at the time that this investigation had been going on, that he was being questioned, well, then you could sit there and go, oh, okay, maybe it's a little harsh because he's not been charged with anything, but they're taking a zero-tolerance approach to this sort of thing. But they don't appear to be doing that unless, of course, new information has come to light. And until we learn whether or not that is the case, we're left none the wiser. And as you say, the perception is simply an organisation that ought to have its house in order by now. It's been given enough warning shots, but doesn't appear to have.
Yeah, they've really got to learn how to handle these crises. That should be the priority number one job of the new Director General, Matt Britton. Firing Scott Mills was apparently the last job of the departing Director General, Tim Davey, who himself has had to resign in disgrace. So, you know, what an organisation, what a damn mess. And we're assuming, but we don't know, and this is what's wrong with this whole situation, we're assuming that the BBC must have found something or other out in the last few weeks to reignite this case that they knew about 7 years ago. If they've just fired him on the Hugh Edwards factor, oh, we took too long dealing with Hugh Edwards, let's get rid of Scott right now. Well, Scott Mills is sitting on the mother of all payouts. And it's really intriguing, fascinating, insofar as Scott Mills, since being dismissed from the BBC last Tuesday, the sacking was announced 2 days ago on Monday, has not said a word, and nor have any of his representatives. Again, we don't know why, but this morass of information vacuum is the problem. Now, I'm not expecting the BBC to say, well, this is what happened on Thursday the 13th at 3 o'clock, he did this, and nobody's expecting this. But there are key questions that it's only reasonable to ask that they're not answering. And therefore, they're creating a massive mess of all of this. We'll be revisiting this story in just a little while with former BBC broadcaster Adrian Mills. No relation. But let's move on. The Prime Minister this morning delivered his address to the nation. We didn't ask him to, but he's addressed us. Basically, you can sum it up. Haven't I been brilliant on the war? Not really, mate. You weren't invited to join. Stop acting as if it was your decision. It wasn't. Stop lying to us about that. And secondly, wouldn't it be great if we could join the EU? And although I can't quite go that far, I want to rejoin the EU. In all but name. Here he is graciously addressing his subjects, our Supreme Leader this morning, Keir Starmer in Downing Street.
It is increasingly clear that as the world continues down this volatile path, our long-term national interest requires closer partnership with our allies in Europe and with the European Union. Brexit did deep damage to our economy, and the opportunities to strengthen our security and cut the cost of living are simply too big to ignore. Closer economic cooperation, closer security cooperation, a partnership that recognises our shared values, our shared interest and our shared future. A partnership for the dangerous world that we must navigate together. A world where this government will be guided at all times by the interests of the British people.
He's so preposterous, isn't he? I mean, look, this country, the great people of Britain voted to leave the EU. They do not want to hear this nonsense about getting closer and closer to Brussels. I mean, it is clearly, I mean, Rachel Reeves echoes the same kind of approach. They want to rejoin the EU in all but name. This morning in the press conference that followed that pathetic speech, the Keir Starmer refused to rule out rejoining the customs union, which would make us members of the EU but with no voting powers. We'd have to do what we were told without having any power at the table. So that's an absolutely hopeless suggestion, but that's what these people want. He is so out of touch with the people of this country, isn't he?
I mean, I don't know about you and everybody else listening. One of the chief reasons I voted to leave the European Union was because politicians in this country don't do their jobs. They didn't do them then, And it was the belief that once you tore away the protections of the European Union, every time something unpopular happened and the government would say, well, we can't do anything about that because that's Europe's remit, even though none of us asked for it to be Europe's remit, if you took away that shield, at some point we'd be able to have a reckoning whereby our politicians would have to do the jobs for which they are elected and for which they are paid. Every time I hear something like this from Keir Starmer, from Rachel Reeves, or whoever it is, I feel more and more vindicated in my choice to vote to leave the European Union, because it's very clear that our political class has no idea of how to run a country, which is why, at the first opportunity, they are desperate to rejoin the organisation that they can outsource the business of governing to. That's all that this is. These people have no vision for the country. They have no real desire to do these jobs that we pay them very handsomely to do, and they get all the prestige of doing. They do not want to make difficult decisions. They do not want to be honest with the public. They want the trappings of office and to be able to pursue their social reforms, their social justice reforms, which it seems is one of the only things that Keir Starmer really cares about, and everything else they want to give to unelected European bureaucrats. They would be happy to make us poorer as long as they got to live this little charmed existence and somebody else did the hard work. Every time Starmer says something like this, every time a Labour-adjacent think tank or intellectual or politician says something like this, it should reinforce everybody who voted to leave their certainty that it was the right thing to do, because it's the same people. I know that they might represent different parties and be of a different generation, but they are fundamentally the same people that gave us Project Fear, that told us that the world was going to end if we left, all the bullying, all the cudgeling. These people are no different really from Cameron and Osborne or Blair. They're simply slightly less interesting than those people. They're the same people. And this, I'll say it again, every time they push this, the idea that Europe is the solution, remember why you voted to leave. It was to stop people like this getting away with it.
And here's what I think is going on here, Benedict. You tell me what you think. As of around about 2 weeks ago, Starmer would have been very, very nervous about his future, probably going along with the main narrative that he'd be screwed come the local elections in May. And now he seems to believe that the whole nation is absolutely impressed by his strong stance on the war, that he kept us out of the Iranian war, stood up to Trump. No, I will not join your war. This is not Britain's war, as if he's some kind of powerful leader who knows his own mind. The truth is, he wasn't invited to join the war. No other country was invited. Therein lies some of the problems that we're suffering right now with Trump. But only America and Israel knew about the attack on Iran. So Keir Starmer is shamelessly lying to us, saying I took the statesman-like decision to keep us out of the war. He didn't. He just wasn't invited. That's it. And what I believe is that over the past few days, partly because of this war issue that he thinks is so wildly popular among the people of this country, that the half-wits who surround him, his whisperers who surround him, who probably 2 weeks ago were saying, well, we've got a world of trouble ahead here, Keir, are now saying to him, your stance on the war has really turned things around. I think you've got every chance of surviving now. Why don't you address the nation, like a big, powerful leader? That's what this pathetic speech was earlier today. And once again, he's way off the pace. It's not going to work. We see Keir Starmer, don't we?
We do, because I tell you what, at the very least, if he was Tony Blair or Gordon Brown, he'd be able to make it sound interesting. He'd be able to make it sound halfway convincing simply through the power of rhetoric. But he doesn't even have that. Trump said that he was no Churchill. Well, he always prided himself on being a lawyer, and I'm here to tell you he's no Rumpole of the Bailey either. I'm not sure exactly what it is that he's good at or how he's ended up here.
Delegating.
Yes, apart from being very good at playing that system, and knifing Jeremy Corbyn in the back, which wasn't that a hilarious turn up for the books. But this is the thing. He doesn't have the vision. He is a fundamentally dishonest person, and you're right, everybody around him is telling him, because they are all fundamentally pretty dishonest people, that everything actually can be salvaged and that it's going very well. But we just have to look at the things that his government is actually pushing, be it the Chagos Islands, be it assisted suicide, whatever it may be. The majority of the public are sat there going, this isn't what I voted for, this isn't what I wanted, none of us were consulted on this, it doesn't improve anything. And all the while he's chundering along, going to the next thing that they didn't ask for, and the next thing that they didn't ask for, the latest of which is potential rejoining at some stage of the European Union. Nobody asked for that at the last general election. That's what he's going to try and give us anyway. And as you say, everybody around him will say, this is the right course. And all you have to do is just be a little economical with the truth. Don't tell them everything. Just tell them enough. Make it sound good. And they'll all come on board. Eventually, the whole house of cards is going to collapse. They just haven't quite realised that yet. And truly, that is the most staggering thing. They haven't realised that the gig is up.
Yeah, we're being led by a completely dysfunctional leader, surrounded by idiots who are telling him lies to bolster up his own confidence, and he thinks he can cling on now. I just don't think he can. Benedict, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Benedict Spence, their political commentator. Let me know what you think, folks. The speech this morning, I want to read a close alliance with Brussels. Our defence and safety is linked to Europe. Linked to Europe? Not so long ago, the German army, I mean, you think our militia's bad. Not so long ago, the German army was rehearsing war games with broomstick handles, acting as rifles and guns because they didn't have any weapons. So I'm not so sure that our safety is wrapped up by joining forces with the coalition of the unwilling. What do you think? Do you support Keir Starmer staying? 0344 499 1000. Do you support Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' clear desire for us to rejoin the European Union in all but name, to subscribe to the subservience of the customs union, where we'd be ordered around, we'd have to obey EU laws, EU rules and regulations, but we would have no vote at the table, no power whatsoever? Is that what you want? That's what Starmer wants. Let me know. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to break now. When we come back, we'll rejoin, regroup around the BBC story. As I say, we're going to talk to former BBC presenter Adrian Mills about Scott Mills. No relation. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're going to move on to the BBC. Excuse me. By the way, Keir Starmer's solution to the Strait of Hormuz, which Donald Trump is threatening not to help reopen, is going to leave it to the Europeans, saying you open your own oil channel. So that'll be left to the Europeans. Keir Starmer's solution, his idea of how we can reopen the Straits of Hormuz, of course, at the moment controlled by Iran, is talks. We're going to have talks to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, this guy's in the wrong damn job, isn't he? Talks. Come on. Be a man. Grow up. Honestly, show some backbone. Talks? That's not going to work. 0344 499 1000. Let's move on to the BBC. Before we talk to Adrian Mills, former B presenter, here is a WhatsApp voice note from Helen.
So this latest thing with the allegations, and it is still an investigation that's been going on with Scott Mills, it kind of is like the last straw, I think. I mean, I love MasterChef, and I still like Greg Wallace, actually. But there's just too much of this going on. It's just ridiculous. But, I mean, we don't know yet, do we, what the outcome is? But we'll see.
So thank you very much, Helen. If you do send us a WhatsApp voice note, you got 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You got 2 minutes. That's Greg Wallace. That's what he used to earn the big bucks for. Shouting units of time. He will be missed. Let's go on to our next guest and talk about Scott Mills. He is no relation Adrian Mills, former BBC presenter. Hello, Adrian.
Thank you. I'm delighted you pointed that out. No relation.
Now, the reason I wanted to get you on, Adrian, was you were on the breakfast show here on Talk yesterday talking to Jeremy Kyle. And like me, you said, well, why has Scott Mills suddenly gone? The BBC must just have found out about this historical sexual case against him, alleged sexual case against him, and the interviews that were conducted under caution by the police 7 years ago. The BBC must have just found out about that and thought... Well, the BBC... But my point is, Adrian, I was thinking exactly the same as you, and we found out today the BBC knew 7 years ago that he was interviewed by the police with a view to serious sexual offences, allegations of serious sexual offences against an underage boy. And the police and the BBC knew all about it. So why do you think they've suddenly sacked him on that issue?
Well, the BBC in their statement today said the BBC have acted decisively in line with our current values. Really? The fact that has leaked out that they knew about this. However, you have to bear in mind that you are innocent until proven guilty. And your previous guest apparently said that Scott Mills approached the BBC and told them about the current investigation, and the police decided, the Crown prosecution decided that there was no evidence to carry the case further forward. That is surely the end of it. So what shocks me is that this relates to the same person, and we don't know anything about the person, and obviously as a victim we have great sympathy. However, why has this now come to light? Tony Hall, who was in charge of the BBC at the time, he said he had no idea about this. So it can only have been possibly the head of the radio, I think it was Radio 1 he was involved in at the time. They were probably the only people who knew about it, and they've obviously decided to keep him on air until found guilty, which he wasn't at the time.
Yeah. So my feeling is, what people are worried about, Piers Morgan among others, have voiced concerns that the BBC, having suffered a lot of grief for taking so long to deal with the Hugh Edwards saga, that paedophile scandal, is anxious to move quickly this time.
Yeah, is this a knee-jerk reaction?
Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, the point is, what we've heard so far Adrian, if this is all there is to it, that 25 years ago he was accused of serious sexual offences against an underage boy, interviewed under caution in 2018, and the case was dropped, no charges, no prosecution, not enough evidence according to the police and the CPS. If that's all it is, and suddenly they've decided to sack him because of that, that doesn't make any sense.
No. They're saying there's new evidence that has come to light.
Yeah.
So what is that new evidence? Now, I had a conversation about this yesterday, and I sort of kind of got what my colleague was saying to me, and they said there are people that have been in really difficult situations at a young age, as this vulnerable under 16-year-old apparently has been. Now, fast forward 20 years, and they're sat at home, and Mills's profile is rising. He's become the new the new radio DJ on Radio 2 instead of Zoe Ball. He's just won around the world. He's got podcasts going on. He's doing Eurovision. So the wound has been opened for that person that has actually suffered, supposedly, allegedly, 20 years ago. And they've gone, do you know something? Look at my life. Look at the suffering I've gone through. I'm not going to put up with this. And I'm going to come forward with things that I should have said 20 years ago.
That's
that can be the only scenario that I can see.
Yeah, it seems to me, unless the BBC have lost their minds, that something must have cropped up in the last few weeks for Scott Mills to be so suddenly sacked last Tuesday. Something new must have entered the picture, you would think. But if they've just done it to counteract their lethargy over Hugh Edwards, if they've just said, well, this time we're going to move fast because this kid has cropped up again and said, you know what happened to me and all that, then I think they might be in some trouble, because you've got to remember, he's not charged with any offence. He was never prosecuted. If they're just...
there's going to have to be some damning evidence, because I would have thought that Scott Mills, absolutely right, you're not saying anything. His agents are not saying anything. But I would imagine that they are talking to some pretty high-powered lawyers, because if the BBC have screwed this up, and maybe there is a reaction of, look at the Hugh Edwards thing, and ironically, the Hugh Edwards programme was on TV the very night before he was sacked.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it a case of saying, look, I've got a case here for unfair dismissal. I was proved not guilty. This allegation is unfounded. And, you know, Tim Davies' last offering in his, head of the BBC is to sack me, just to clear the desks for the next person in. I think there's a huge problem here. The only thing I would say, and I said it to Jeremy the other day, is the Sunday papers usually dig up what, I don't have to tell you this.
This much I know, Adrian.
I was going to say, I'm preaching to the converted here. I always remember, going off at a slight tangent, talking about newspapers, Stuart Higgins, chap who used to be in charge of the Sun newspaper.
I know Stuart, old friend of mine.
I had a great girlfriend called Nikki Parsons, and he phoned me up one day and he said, Adrian, he said, we've got a story we're going to run on Sunday, and he said, and I thought I'd better get your take on it because it involves you. My blood ran cold. And he said, we've got a story here that you're living with Nicholas Parsons. And I went, please print that story and I can sue and I can live happily ever after.
That's Stuart all over. That really is. Lovely guy.
One thing I would say is, am I right in saying I was absolutely gobsmacked when I saw that Scott Mills, if he is fired, is in line for a pension
£162,000
a year.
£162,000 a year. Folks, what do you think about that? Whatever Scott Mills has done, he was earning £360,000 a year. He's in for a £162,000 a year BBC pension. So you, ladies and gentlemen, will be paying for Scott's generous pension. But as I say, we have to watch this space because we don't know what the details are. But my last question to you, Adrian, is as you and I rake over the coals and wonder what the hell has happened here, and we opine that it's likely that something cropped up over the last few weeks to reignite this old case. Well, once again, the BBC are making a massive mess of handling this, and you'd think that after Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris Harris, Stuart Hall and Hugh Edwards, they would by now be experts at handling paedophile scandals. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, well, this is an incredibly high-profile presenter, and it feels, at this moment in time, because they've not provided any other form of evidence or news information, that they've thrown to the wolves. Is, right, you're fired, but we can't tell you why. And you think, really? So to just leak out, oh, there's new evidence. Well, tell us what the new evidence is. If you're so convinced that it's right, then you should be telling us.
Exactly.
Because this story will
at least allude to it, give us some idea. But to say nothing, they said, oh, it's personal. The other day, they said it's personal conduct. You wouldn't expect us to say anything more. Yes, we bloody well would expect you to say more. That's the point. They don't get it. They take our money and they keep secrets from ourselves. And meanwhile, they've just sent out 49 million letters warning us to pay our TV licenses or else. That's the BBC for you. Adrian, I've got to move on, but it's great to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Adrian Mills there, former presenter. Next up, we're going to talk about this weird phenomenon down in South London, Clapham, twice. In just a few days. Massive crowds, thousands of kids storming, yobs, thugs in balaclavas, storming the entire high street, then going over to Clapham Common, setting fire to the place. And apparently it's spreading across the nation. These are like social media link-up sessions. So it's all done by social media. They all meet, shops barricaded, mothers and children in terror, so on and so forth. Hardly any arrests. We'll talk about that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Strange phenomenon. On Saturday in Clapham, very nice upscale area of South London, right by the Common there. Thousands of yobs, thugs, turned up in balaclavas, marauding up and down the high street. Shops barricading themselves up. Look at it, locking doors, terrified families cowering in these shops. Look at it, it's just running up and down. They then adjourned to Clapham Common, nearby Clapham Common, where they built fires all over the Common. So it was a real scene of chaos, a virtual riot, really. And then it happened again. Last night, happened again in Clapham last night, and we're hearing that over Easter this is a phenomenon that may spread all over the country. What it is, it's done via social media, TikTok, X, Facebook and all of that, Instagram, where they all send messages that it's a link up, a call to link up. And then they go and do this. They steam the shops, nick stuff, and thousands of kids. Yesterday, police made 2 arrests. So you can expect a lot more of this because they know they can move with impunity. Let's talk to former police officer Norman Brennan. Welcome, Norman. I mean, what we're seeing here, thousands of kids, yobs, thugs in balaclavas, steaming up and down the high street, Clapham twice. We fear is going to spread to the whole country. You know, terrible scenes, virtual riot. Twice, Saturday and last night in Clapham, 2 arrests. That's not enough, is it?
I think it's about 3 now and 1 charge, but you're absolutely right. I mean, Kevin, this is not a new phenomenon. In numbers, yes, it is. This is happening every day across Britain, normally in smaller numbers, people masked up on bikes, electric bikes, robbing people, causing mayhem and fighting each other. Now, what happens is, as you have just highlighted on social media, is you and I can post on X, as it is now, and within 30 seconds, Kevin, tens of millions of people could have seen that post. Yep. So if you send it out to certain Facebook groups and certain areas, and I did an interview just recently, there was a number of schools across London, about 12, that were contacting each other on social media with a view of fighting, and some even suggested bringing along a knife. We have got what is commonly known as a perfect storm coming our way. And when I say a perfect storm, unless we deal with it, Kevin, robustly, we're going to be hit with a tsunami, just like we were in 2011 when there was a shooting of Mark Duggan. And what I will tell you now, and I'm absolutely serious about this, we are one controversial shooting or one tinderbox or powder keg away, Kevin, from all-out disorder in Britain. I know many of the public are interested at the moment in the cost of living, etc., but I'm in touch with law and order, and I couldn't be more serious in what I've just highlighted.
But, well, I'm tempted to say the truth, which is in your day when you were a copper, Norman, this would not have happened. But you've got cops just basically standing there looking and not really doing anything. We've got some quotes coming in from this high street, from Clapham High Street. This guy called Shike Weiss, and he works at the chicken shop Rooster Spot. He said many children came to the high street and police were catching some people, but then at least 70 to 80 of these kids came into our shop as well. They were shouting, sitting there. Some were rude and aggressive with me. Some did go outside nicely. It's damaging business, and the police said, close your shop if you can. This is another guy, Yash, who works at Olive and Metze next door to Sainsbury. I was working here and I witnessed it all. Once the police came to Sainsbury's, they ran to McDonald's. There was a fight. I had to close the door. I don't want any trouble. You don't know what they carry and you cannot touch them, and so on and so forth. All these shopkeepers actually, during these 2 riots, became like refuge centres. They turned their shops into refuge centres, all credit to them, for terrified families, mothers and kids who were just out shopping, and they had to take them into the shops, board up, barricade the doors to protect themselves from this marauding mob. And we're hearing that this link-up thing on social media might result in this happening all over the country over Easter. And, you know, I do sympathise to some extent with the police because the numbers here are immense. But I think they've got to send a more serious message than after 2 riots, 3 arrests. That's not enough.
Kevin, what you've got to realise, and I do, is the police are not the police service that you and I knew.
I know.
Social media now highlights every single arrest of a suspect, particularly a young black suspect. I arrested many of them in my day, and I'll tell you what, Kevin, if I had been arresting someone and someone had camera, I probably would have been up on discipline charges, or they would have wanted me to be sacked for being robust. I'm afraid the robustness has been knocked out of the police service now. Stop and search is down from 1.5 million to 500,000. That's why some of the crime stats are going down, not because the police are doing well, although they're doing okay on knife crime and certainly on homicide. Kevin, we are 20,000 officers short from 2009 from the population growth. 9,000 police officers left last year, and I know the point we're discussing is disorder. At this moment in time, there hasn't been major crime alongside this disorder, but at places like Westfield there is. And if this gets out of control, which is beginning to, Kevin,
yes,
I can see wide-scale disorder that are similar, if not to the last riots in 2011, if not worse. Even then, the police couldn't cope, and now they can cope even less.
Well, as you say, or as you imply, Norman, that they fear, cops around the country fear that they're called link-ups. So it goes on to TikTok, it goes on to Instagram, X, all meet up, we're all going to Clapham High Street. Well, there are fears that over Easter, this could happen all over the country. So we've got a developing scene of lawlessness on a mass scale. Now, the sort of defining characteristic of all these thugs in balaclavas, these young people, is this. And I'm sure they're not all terrible kids, but a lot of them are feral. But the defining, unifying characteristic that this lot have got is a total lack of respect for law and order and the police. Therein lies our problem.
You're absolutely right. And in particular in London, many people are scared witless to actually highlight the issue. The number of youths yesterday, both male and female, were kids. Where are their parents? They were predominantly black. And around the country, not just London, Kevin, I'm seeing a lot of disorder, stabbings, murders, and people carrying knives from that particular community. Now, it's about time that the parents, the ones that still hang around to bring up their children, started to take responsibility. We have a lost generation, and too many of this lost generation have no hope for the future. And the thing is, Kevin, when you have no hope for the future, your family then becomes the street man and woman, the street boy or girl, and then you join them. And when you start carrying out unlawful acts, other places around Britain will see that they can do it and get away with it. And we have no deterrence, Kevin. We've got a government that are decriminalising crime rather than actually cracking down on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you also said, Norman, you're quite right. I mean, a lot of these kids are young people of colour, a lot of black kids there. And I'm afraid that the new generation of police officers are worried about tackling people of colour in case they get accusations of career-ruining racism. So we've got a problem there. Norman, very good to talk to you about it. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Norman Brennan there, former police officer. Strange phenomenon, terrifying phenomenon. Coming soon to a town near you, I'm afraid to announce. Now, breaking news. Prosecutors are providing, I'm quoting here, providing early investigative advice to the police as they carry out their inquiries into Lord Peter Mandelson and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's links to Jeffrey Epstein. This is an announcement by the Crown Prosecution Service. That's sort of slightly elliptical, isn't it? But I think what that means is that the police are uncovering information that they might think is very relevant to their investigation into Mandelson and the former Prince Andrew's connection to the sex trafficking paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. They're uncovering information, and the Crown Prosecution Service is saying, well, we need this, this and this. So, in other words, what that amounts to is the investigation into Lord Peter Mandelson and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's connection and activities with Jeffrey Epstein is proceeding. And information has been uncovered. No more than that. But very interesting breaking news there. Let's go to break now, and afterwards let's talk about the migrant crisis and the latest absurdities involving this government and their failure to deal with that escalating situation. That next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the migrant crisis. Let's go straight over to my next guest. He is borders expert Henry Bolton. Welcome, Henry.
Hello, hi.
Now, this is just ridiculous. This is pathetic. So, for 3 years, 3 years ago, our then Prime Minister, you get lost, there have been so many of them, haven't there? Our then Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, signed a deal with the French to patrol their own northern French beaches to stop the migrants and the boats coming across the channel. That deal was worth £500 million, £500 million. In those 3 years, for all that money, the gendarmes, who spent most of their time smoking gaulois and waving the migrants goodbye, wishing them all the best in the promised land as they head off in their small boats towards Britain, they have succeeded, or should I say failed, in stopping 37% of the boats and the migrants. 37%. So the vast majority, 63%, have just got through. We gave them £500 million for that. So Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, quite reasonably said, well, look, you know, so that deal has ended. We need to negotiate a new deal. Talks are going on right now. She said, well, you know, you were so useless last time. I want a performance clause, a pay-as-you-go kind of deal. In other words, you get paid according to results. And if you only stop 37% of the boats and the migrants, you get a hell of a lot less money than if you stop, say, 70 or 80 or even 90% of the migrants. You get paid according to your performance. The French gendarmes don't like that one bit. They won't sign that deal. Make of that what you will. Meanwhile, but to keep them patrolling the beach, Mahmoud has extended the current deal to the tune of £16.2 million. So for 2 months, the next 2 months, we're going to pay them £2 million a week to not patrol their beaches very well, with a view to signing a deal in 2 months' time for another £500 million. I'll tell you what, Henry, stop the world. I want to get off. It has gone mad. This is insane.
The whole thing is mad, Kevin, but I'm going to... there's another side to this story, and you know, we're really only getting one side of it in the UK. There's another element to this as well, that the government, Shabana Mahmoud, wants the French to build a migrant reception and processing centre in France. And the idea is that the French, when they stop somebody, then that person is detained, put in that centre, and then processed in whichever way the French want to process them. Now, that might be that they end up being returned or whatever it might be. Now, the problem here, from the French point of view, is they are utterly and completely convinced that the only reason that these migrants travel to the North French coast area is because they want to come to the UK. And the only reason they want to come to the UK is because successive British governments have absolutely refused to take credible measures to make the UK
to set up any deterrence. And the French are right about that, aren't they?
The French, that's my point, really. The French have got a right in that, and they are, if they sense that if they give ground on this, two things will happen. One is the UK authorities get off the hook, and two is that they end up structurally, legally, administratively responsible for all these people. So the two things, you know, they end up with a bigger headache, and the Brits.
Yeah. But what about the contract? Why are we giving them another £500 million when they only stopped 37% of the migrants from the small boats over the past 3 years? That's not worth £500 million. We're paying them £2 million a week right now because the talks have stalled. I think we should just say to them, look, if you don't sign this performance deal, we're not wasting our money anymore.
Yeah, well, the problem there is that the Labour government is so... you know, they're so politically timid that there's no leadership there to be decisive and have a clear vision as to what they're trying to do and a plan as to how to do it. So, if of course, what would happen is if they weren't able to negotiate a deal, then the British media would sort of come back at them and say, "What are you doing? This is another failure, another failure, another failure." And so they're clueless. They're running around like headless chickens. So they're just trying to patch things up politically and keep the sort of media off their back to an extent. Well, it won't work because, as we can see, the boats still come, the migrants still come, but at least from their point of view, they're able to say, well, we are doing something. I mean, how many times do you hear the Prime Minister, for example, saying, we're delivering at pace? Actually, nothing gets delivered.
Slow pace.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so it's all rhetoric. And it's all presentation. The actual delivery does not exist because there's no leadership, there's no vision, there's no plan. So there we go. So I have to say, you know, and I keep saying it, and I you know, Kevin, that I am absolutely passionate about stopping these boats. So, but it can come across as a little bit pro-French. I'm not being pro-French, but we've got to understand the French position on this, and we must not, and the French don't want, the Brits, the British authorities, to be let off the hook by signing an agreement that basically passes the buck back to France.
Yeah, we have to say to them, look, you know, you don't want to sign a performance clause. You don't want to agree to that. You know, we see you. We know why you don't want to sign up to that. It's because you don't envisage stopping all that many of the migrants in the small boats. That's why you won't sign this deal. At which point we should just say, well, screw it, get out of here.
I agree. I mean, but there is another course that the Brits could take, and I've argued this as well. Well, there are two things. France doesn't have full control over its external borders. The European Union, the European Commission, has a great deal of say over how that happens, and we're not dealing with them on this issue. So, you know, there's that problem. The other problem is that the French, quite understandably, are saying, well, we don't let these people into the European Union anyway. Now, that's an internal matter between the French and the European Union. But all of these things need to be put into the mix as far as I'm concerned. And it's all driven by us here in the UK refusing point blank to put in place sufficient deterrents to stop them.
That's the centre of the problem, is we've got no deterrents, so they're going to keep coming across. Meanwhile, we're paying them £2 million a week to not stop the boats and migrants. How crazy is that? Henry Bolton, good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Back in a minute with Lord John Redwood with all the big news. Stay tuned.
Fancy returning to the front line as Foreign Secretary?
I am going to return. I am going to return to the people from whence I came.
Hello, I'm Peter Mandelson, and I'm proud to serve as His Majesty's British Ambassador to the United States of America.
I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Mandy's out 4 decades and 3 scandals, or 3 that we know about. Guess what? Number 10 knew all about it. They knew that he lived in Jeffrey Epstein's flat.
Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party late last night over the allegation of a $75,000 set of payments to him from Epstein while he was business secretary, $10,000 to his now husband, a photo of him in his pants. This isn't just bad form. There are strong arguments here for him to be facing investigation over misconduct in public office.
I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Breaking news that Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt. This is the establishment, the British establishment on trial. Came to us around about 5 o'clock when we learned that we saw footage of Peter Mandelson being led out of his London home in very exclusive Regent's Park by 3 coppers.
Now we have all these allegations, we have all the documentation related to those allegations, which Downing Street is being forced to put out. The first tranche of it will be early next month.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In a little while, we're going to talk about a council, Oxford Council, taking legal action to stop the Raising the Colours boys from putting up flags, Union Jacks and St George Cross flags. They're so infuriated, they're so triggered, the Oxford Council, by scenes of patriotism, by patriotic flags being flown around their city and their borough. They're taking legal action to stop it. What's the matter with these people? We'll talk about that in a little while. First of all, though, let's talk about some of the bigger stories of the day with former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Lord John Redwood. Welcome, John.
Good afternoon, and let's have some common sense.
Let's do it. We didn't get much common sense, if you ask me, out of Downing Street this morning. As per, Keir Starmer addressed the nation, decided that in a sort of Churchillian way he would address us about all of the crises facing this nation in these difficult times. The essence of what he said was, let's rejoin the EU and then everything will be all right. Have a listen to him.
But as the world continues down this volatile path, our long-term national interest requires closer partnership with our allies in Europe and with the European Union. Brexit did deep damage to our economy, and the opportunities to strengthen our security and cut the cost of living are simply too big to ignore. Closer economic cooperation, closer security cooperation, a partnership that recognises our shared values, our shared interest and our shared future. A partnership for the dangerous world that we must navigate together. A world where this government will be guided at all times by the interests of the British people.
Do you think, John, that the Prime Minister has any respect whatsoever for the many millions, the majority of people in this country who voted to leave the European Union, who wanted Brexit? Does he not have any respect for those people at all? Does he not have any respect for the biggest democratic decision in Britain's history? This is an utter disgrace.
Well, it is indeed, and he is so stupid to himself and his own party, because not only is he being undemocratic, but the 17 million of us who voted to leave the EU were right. We're not going to get richer by sending more taxes to the EU and adopting more of their silly laws. Doesn't he know that the income per head, the output per head of the average EU state is lower than the United Kingdom's? Doesn't he know that the EU leading countries normally grow even more slowly than we are doing in the United Kingdom? Doesn't he know that the American GDP per head now is exactly double the EU average? That's where the action is, that's where the trade is, that's where the money is. And this man wants to turn his back on that and link himself up to a group of countries who simply want to pillage us. They want to take our fish, take our money, take our markets by imposing rules that make it more difficult for us to make things in Britain. And as to the insult to democracy, and the idea that joining a group of countries who've been spending even less on defence than we have will make us safer and they will look after our interests is for the birds. Of course they're not going to do that. Once again, they want a free ride on the fact that our defences are a bit better than theirs, if they could no longer free ride on the Americans.
Also, in this morning's event, so he addressed the nation. We didn't ask him to, but he did. I think he thinks he's in with a chance of staying as Prime Minister. That's what this is all about. He's trying to seem statesman-like and put himself forward as a very powerful leader who can steer us, navigate us through these current stormy waters. But in the press conference that followed that, he was asked, well, do you want us to, you say we're not actually going to rejoin the EU, but it seems like you want to rejoin in all but name. Will you tell us that we will not rejoin the customs union? He would not tell us that. In other words, he wants us to re-enter the customs union, which is the worst of all worlds. That means we have to take the rules and regulations of Brussels. We have to do exactly what the EU tells us, but we have no power at the table, no voting ability. He wants us to get back into that ludicrous situation.
Well, and again, I mean, that's breaking his word in the solemn manifesto. He's been saying before the election and after the election that they're not going to rejoin the customs union or the single market. And now he's trying to cozy up to both, particularly to the single market, in a backdoor way. And this is totally dishonest. But it's also wrong. I mean, if we were to join the customs union in the way the Liberal Democrats openly say they want to do, it means we have to make things dearer that we import from the non-EU. We scrapped tariffs on about 24% of all the things we import when we left the EU customs union. We'd have to put those back on, so we're going to be worse off at a time when inflation is already out of control. And we would also be in a position where, of course, in the customs union, we would then, as you rightly say, have to follow their trade rules. And so we probably have to tear up all those trade agreements which the previous government and this government had proudly negotiated with India, with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, with America and others. So it would be a disaster. It would wreck our trade relationships, and it would mean we would pay more for all our imports.
And I think a lot of his narrative this morning was revolving around the fact that his love affair with Donald Trump is clearly over. So he's turning to Europe rather than America for Britain's future, if you like. And he says that security is at the heart of this. We need to get together with our European brother nations, and this is important for security. Well, first of all, it's being exposed that we have very limited military resources these days. Our Navy, our Army, our Air Force are down to pathetic levels. And he thinks that we can get security by hooking up with the so-called coalition of the willing. Now, not so long ago, Germany, the German army, during war games, while it was rehearsing for potential conflict, was so low on equipment that its soldiers, during war games, were instructed by the then German politician Ursula von der Leyen to use broom handles and pretend that they were guns. This is the kind of nation that Keir Starmer thinks our future security is wrapped up with.
Well, what is this coalition of the willing? We had him trying to put together a coalition of the willing to help in Ukraine. Not many countries wanted to sign up, but they never defined how much force they got and what it would do. And I don't think there's any enthusiasm for any of them to actually send troops into Ukraine. And now we have him saying there's going to be a coalition of the willing to miraculously recapture the Straits of Hormuz and let Western trade flow through there again. I don't believe there's any chance of him organising such a coalition. And I don't think he himself wants to take on Iran, which is what you would have to do in current situation to re-establish those trade routes and defend commercial shipping. And so I think he's just misleading us all. I don't think there's anything serious. This is too late, Keir. It's never here, Keir. And now we have Keir who never gets our planes and our naval ships in particular into the right position. So this was a man decommissioning our last frigate in the Mediterranean at the end of last year, just before a war breaks out there. We're drawing our last minesweeper just before the Iranians possibly start mining the very important trade routes. And this is the man who had allowed so many of our big ships, quite powerful ships, to be at home on long-term maintenance that he didn't have a single ship to send on time to protect our people in Cyprus. It's a complete disgrace.
It's a shambles. And also during this speech, during his address to the nation, he talked about the Strait of Hormuz. Now, who knows what America and Donald Trump are going to do. In defense of President Trump, I think he's deliberately setting up a kind of wall of confusion so that the Iranians can't be sure what he will do. My hunch is that America will take steps to unblock the Strait of Hormuz, maybe might invade Karg Island, put some brutes on the ground. My hunch is America will do something like that. But currently, the president's ever-changing stances. We're not going to unblock the Straits of Hormuz. My message to Europe is if you want oil through that channel, unblock it yourselves. OK, I don't think it's going to come to that, but let's just say it does. So Keir Starmer addressed this morning. What is his solution? How does he think that Britain and Europe and all the other nations are going to unblock the Strait of Hormuz? This is what he actually said. Talks. We've got to have talks. What on earth is he talking about?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he's been telling us for a long time that the right thing to do is to sit down with Iran and talk a peace through, but I don't believe he's attempted to do that. He probably doesn't even know who are now in charge of Iran, because so many of the top leaders are being killed by the joint Israeli-American actions. And if he doesn't know who to talk to and he isn't able to engage in talks, and he's an unlikely intermediary, why is he pretending that it's suddenly going to be solved by peace breaking out? And he ought to be talking to and including in his talks our allies in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and all the others, Qatar. And he doesn't seem to be doing that. They don't seem to be part of his coalition of the willing. Well, they're the people who are getting hit all the time alongside our bases. And they are the people who need to develop relations with the new Iran, if there is a new Iran. But I think we have now so alienated the United States of America, the EU states and the UK together, that Donald Trump could just simply withdraw and say, well, I don't need to get oil through that Gulf because I got plenty of oil and gas of my own and elsewhere. It's your problem, Europe. And I think then it will be exposed that the coalition of the willing is not willing, doesn't have the force, and doesn't want to take the risk, because the risk would be very severe.
But it's almost like a sickness with Keir Starmer. You know, every time he sees a war, in this case the very serious Middle Eastern war, the Iranian war, it's let's de-escalate. And, you know, just saying the way to unblock the Strait of Hormuz is talks. That's just utter nonsense. It's utter nonsense.
Yeah, well, as I say, who is he going to talk to and when is he going to start talking? And why is he such a magical talker that Iran would suddenly say, oh, yes, Sir Keir, you're quite right. Here's our peace treaty. We won't shoot at your people anymore. When Starmer has to wake up to the fact that although he didn't want to be in this war, and I don't want us to be in this war, the fact is we are in this war because we are an ally of the United States of America. And our bases are seen by Iran as part of the problem, so our bases have been under attack. And our Prime Minister was asleep on the job, and he didn't have the force there to protect them properly.
Exactly right. Now, to go back to this strange addressing the nation this morning, let's talk a bit of Westminster gossip. My take on what's been going on is that Keir Starmer, 2 weeks ago, even his most devoted acolytes who surround him in number 10 Downing Street would probably have been saying, you're in a bit of trouble here, Keir. You know, these May elections, you may not survive. We've got to work hard to bolster up your premiership. Well, then along came the war, if you like, and he has lied. He's still lying, saying that he took the statesman-like decision to keep Britain out of the war. This is not our war. I've taken the decision to keep us out of the war. That's a lie. He wasn't invited to join the war. Only America and Israel knew about the attack on Iran. No one else. So when he says, I took the decision to keep us out, that's a lie. That said, number 10 Downing Street and the half-wits who surround our Prime Minister, I think, have convinced themselves that this stance on the war is wildly popular, and suddenly a sceptical nation have all come rallying behind our Prime Minister in our hour of need. What a leader he is. And so his acolytes are telling him now, mate, hey, Keir, I think you could still survive. This war thing's really going well for us, and that's why I had the address this morning. Keir Starmer, as with everything else he's doing, is plotting what he sees his way of staying the leader of the Labour Party and indeed our Prime Minister. That's what this is all about. But I've got bad news for him. I still don't think he's going to make it. Do you?
I think it's very difficult for him to, but that's a matter for the Labour Party. Obviously, the Labour Party can go on governing because they won so many seats, but they seem to forget from day one that they won on a tiny percentage of the vote for a winning party. And they've managed to halve the amount of support they had at the election over the last year and a half by the dreadful policies. But normally, if you're going to be a great war leader, you are fighting a war and you want to win, and you explain to people why you've got to win the war and how you're going to win it. This is a so-called war leader who's saying, well, we're not in a war, but it doesn't seem like that. I think if you're our people in the Cyprus base or the Diego Garcia base actually under fire, and I think we want our Prime Minister to wake up to the genuine disasters and the genuine threats that there are to our armed service personnel and potentially to the rest of us, and that he should make a better job of defending us. Then if he really does believe there is an easy peace settlement to be had, why isn't he telling us how and when and who he's talking to, and set out what the peace agenda looks like? And of course he isn't, because he is actually misleading us again. Yeah, he hasn't a clue how to end this by negotiation.
Exactly right. And he says we're well set up to survive all the crises that are going to come our way because of the oil shortages, energy shortages. We are not well set up to deal with that at all. He's just lying to us. I think he lies to himself now, John.
Well, he just wants us to import everything, and then he can't understand it when international trade is disrupted. Some of us say, well, if you've got more of our own things out the ground and produce more of your own things in British factories, we wouldn't have all this trouble, whereas we are very cruelly exposed as a country because he is closing down our oil and gas industry. He's presided over the closure of 2 of our 6 refineries. So we have to import the very things that are being damaged in the Gulf.
It is so bizarre. John, great to talk to you. Love having you on the show. Come back and see us again soon. Lord John Redwood, their former Conservative Cabinet Minister, talking a lot of sense. Keir Starmer, by the way, who's taking us back into the EU. Let me know what you think about that, in all but name anyway. He says that we are well set up as a country to deal with the economic storms and turbulence that are coming our way because of the Strait of Hormuz, because of the Iranian war. We're not, are we? We're just not. That's another lie. Why does he keep lying to us? 03444991000. Let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Jacqueline in Hampshire. Hello, Jacqueline. What do you think about Starmer in the EU? He's screwing us over, isn't he?
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Yeah, definitely. Can't steer UK. Yes, he screwed us over by not backing up USA, even though I'm not, a lover of what he's done, but we still are, personal relationship and all that malarkey.
Yeah.
But what I'm really annoyed about is that I voted for Brexit and my husband voted for Remain, and we had so much stick.
You're still together.
Oh, to be quite honest, I was called a racist, fascist, a bigot, homophobic.
Over the top. Yeah.
I had to leave Facebook, and I'm not really one of these. I don't do any social media now because and these were friends. These weren't.
I know it broke up friendships, it divided families.
Yeah.
But you won. The Brexit vote triumphed, and now we have a government that wants to betray that vote, wants to ignore the democratic process, and basically return to joining the Brussels club. That's not what the people voted for. That's not what the people want, is it?
No. And the other thing that really annoys me is we're still under European human rights, or
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not fit for purpose for us. as a nation. We are now the United Kingdom human rights for victims, not for perpetrators. And that's what really gets my goat. And that's the reason why I did Brexit. Was not because I'm, a right-wing, horrible sort of
racist, fascist, and all that. Yeah,
I'm not one of those. I wanted our own rules and to be governed independently and to make our own choices.
Exactly right, Jacqueline. And what does this guy want us to do? He wants us to basically rejoin the EU, the Brussels Club, in all but name, and take their rules again and their laws and their diktats. They love rules and regulations, that lot, and that's what we voted against. We don't want to get closer to Europe. Why does he keep saying this? We want to get further away. We really do. Jacqueline, I've got to go, but really good call. Thank you very much. Ring me again. Jacqueline in Hampshire. Let's go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Oxford Council, which is taking legal action to stop raising the coloured boys, those guys and women who go around putting up Union Jacks and St George's flags. Oxford Council so enraged by this, they've launched legal action to stop patriotic flags being flown anywhere near them. Why are they so worried about our national flags? I don't know. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about Oxford Council, Oxfordshire County Council to be precise. Raising the Colours are particularly active in the Oxford area. And this apparently has enraged the local council to the extent that they have launched legal action against the Raising the Colours organisation. They're the guys and girls who go around the country putting up Union Jacks and St George's Cross flags in a display of mass patriotism. Now, the council has legally warned the Raising the Colours organisation that if it does not comply with their instruction to cease putting up all flags in the Oxford area, that all available options will be pursued, including civil or criminal proceedings. So what is it about our national flags, the English flag, St George's Cross, and the Union Jack, the British flag, that Oxford Council hates so much? Let's talk to Flagman and property developer James Henry Holmes. Hi, James. First of all, why are you called Flagman?
Well, I'm not really. It's just something that's occasionally people.
I realise it's not your birth name, but why do people? Why do people give you the nickname Flagman?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Kevin.
Yeah, cool.
It's really become about because I've got a campaign called flytheflag.uk, and I put up the biggest Union Jack in Britain on one of my buildings. That came to prominence because it's been viewed about 7 or 8 million times online. And I'm quite vocal about this, that we should be proudly displaying our flags, just like they're doing it in other countries. I mean, other countries that you may think have got nothing to be proud about, the people of that country are still proud of their flag because it is their flag. So if you don't identify, if you can make a country or people not identify as being from an area, so you may say from Oxfordshire, or I've just seen online now that's Nottingham. That's Nottingham, I believe.
Yeah, this is
where my mum. That's Nottingham, where my mum comes from, actually. I'm preparing now the biggest St George's Cross in Britain as well that I'm about to install before St George's Day. But if you can make people not identify with an area, and obviously the bigger area would be the country, then it's far easier to make them not identify as anything. So the way that this has been going for a number of years in the UK is that if we can make people not identify as part of the nation state, then you will accept the European Union more easily as being where you belong to. And the reason why they want you to accept the supranational states more is because then they can be more corrupt, because you are only one of, say, 560 million rather than one of only 60 million.
Listen,
the reality is that... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me just... So I had the Raising the Colours boys in my studio a couple of months ago, and they're particularly active in Oxford, in the Oxford area, because the Oxford Council is always taking down these flags. So the Raising the Colours boys said, well, every flag they take down, we'll put 2 up as a response, and I think they've been doing that, and they've got those, I don't know what you call those, low lifting devices. They go
cherry
around.
picker.
Yeah, cherry pickers. That's it. Well, anyway, this is a statement that's come out of Oxford Council, who are taking legal action to stop this. It says, we are proud of our diverse communities in Oxfordshire and of being the first county council to be awarded local authority of sanctuary status. I think that's got something to do with migrants or something. We proudly fly the Union Jack and St George's flags, which are visible symbols of democracy and unity. Correct. Now listen to this, James. This is where it gets murky in my view. However, the widespread installation of flags by Raise the Colours is not a sign of patriotism. It is an act of intimidation and division that is having a real and damaging impact on our communities. Listen to this. Our residents report feeling distressed, unwelcome and unsafe in their own neighbourhoods. Our team's removing the flags, together with residents who have challenged the individuals installing them, have been subject to abuse and threatening behaviour. This is totally unacceptable. The council has a responsibility to act where behaviour undermines community cohesion and the safe and inclusive use of public spaces. That is why we are taking firm action. So what the council is saying is that the sight of Union Jacks and St George Cross flags leaves residents feeling distressed, unwelcome and unsafe in their own neighbourhoods, and that these flags are having a real and damaging impact on our communities. What on earth is that all about? What is that about?
So this is typical of the political class.
Please.
They think that they speak for everybody. It's always the same. This is where woke thing has come from. It's a vocal minority, because the majority, hard-working people who are getting up, going to work, trying to raise their family, trying to pay their bills, haven't got time to be making all these complaints. We've seen this when we've put these window transfers in businesses. You'll get people that's never ever visited that business will do an online review, negative about them putting the flag up, because the hard-working people, the true patriotic people, are busy at work. They haven't got time. They don't think to complain. And this is exactly where the woke ideology comes from. Most people do not agree with it, but because they're in the minority for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other stuff that they said, that's what they always say. They always say, I've had lots of kind of Charlie Kirk type interviews with people, and they will say, I'm as patriotic as anybody, and I'm this and I'm that. And you go, if that's the case, show me a picture of where you're flying a flag. Show me a picture of it on your phone, of it on your house or on your car, because it's very easy language to use, yet they can never prove it. We had a lady ring me once saying that she was kind of had a good job in the NHS, but she was afraid for all the non-white people working in the NHS. And yet when I challenged her about it, I said, well, that's funny, because I drive around in a car that is all a Land Rover Defender that has got a black and grey Union Jack on it and a flagpole on the boot. And the abuse that I get is always from the students, university students, because the people in schools generally are like cheering the flag. Yeah. But because the longer you spend in university, the more woke and lefty you become. And I live in a good area, so therefore very virtue signalling. The abuse you get is always from the white students up to middle age. It is never from the ethnic minorities. And why do you think that is? Well, it's because the ethnic minorities that chose to come to this country are not intimidated by the flag. Otherwise, why would they have come? Well, they have come to Britain because it is known for not being a racist country. It is the white middle classes that want to virtue signal and speak on behalf of non-white ethnic minorities, people who I would say, how many of those are genuinely in your friendship group? How many of them did you invite to your wedding? How many of them did you invite to your kid's party?
Well, what this comes down to, in my view, James, is these councillors, this council, like so many virtue-signalling middle-class people, have come to associate our national flags, the Union Jack and the St George's Cross, with far-right extremism. I think what Raising the Colours are trying to prove is, no, this is just a gesture of patriotism. And I just find it extraordinary that this council says that because Raising the Colours are hanging out our national flags, locals are feeling distressed, unwelcome and unsafe in their own neighbourhoods. What, because of our national flags?
So let's put this back. I'm sorry to interrupt. Let's put this back the other way. How many people have they had that have said, I'm feeling distressed or intimidated by this?
Yeah.
In comparison to how many people, the people that built the country, as in the plumbers, the builders, the street sweepers, the litter pickers, not the people that are sat in an office typing, oh, I think this would be a good policy. I think that the genuine people who are out making society work, how many of those people are actually genuinely happy about seeing these flags? And who are these council leaders to say that we should spend council taxpayers' money to take legal action? What I would suggest to Raise the Colours or any of the other organisations is call their bluff. When I unveiled the biggest flag in Britain, Chesterfield Council threatened legal action against me. And I said, bring it on then.
Yeah.
Because all this will do is expose you. It won't expose me for anything.
Yeah, well, what we've got to do, James, is we've got to get away from this idea that the Union Jack and the St George's Cross is somehow symbols of dangerous far-right extremisms, as opposed to what they really are. They're gestures of patriotism. This is insane what this council is doing. James, great to talk to you. Take care now. James Henry Holmes there, flagman and property developer. What do you think about this? This council just saying that somehow or other flags cause distress. They're unwelcome. They make people feel unsafe in their own neighbourhoods. To put flags up, to put national flags, our national flags, is an act of intimidation and division that is having a real and damaging impact on our communities. Have you ever heard such a load of claptrap in your life? Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. Talking about claptrap, let's talk about Ed Miliband. Now, most of the country, nearly everyone I know, nearly everyone I bet you know, is well aware of the fact that crazy Ed Miliband, our nut zero secretary, is insane, and his energy policies are ruining the economy of this country and are going to cause us massive problems now that the real effect of the Iranian war is about to hit us hard with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the ensuing energy shortage. So we all know that. But he is the MP for Doncaster, and his own constituents have been coming out in force to say this man is mad, this man is crazy, this man is ruining his country. So he can't even command the support of his own constituents. We'll talk to Doncaster people next. Stay where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
How much do you earn? Everybody, give me a ring. How much do you earn? No, seriously. Is it £162,000 a year? Because that looks like what Scott Mills, who's got sacked from the BBC, that's what he's going to get as his pension. So not working for the BBC will earn Scott Mills 162 grand a year. He's currently on, or he was on, 360,000 a year until he was sacked 2 days ago on Monday. Yeah, sacked on Monday. £162,000 a year. That is Scott Mills' pension, apparently. Is he worth that? You know, sacked in disgrace. It looks as if he was. Well, he was. 162 grand a year. What do you reckon of They're taking for us. The BBC's taking us for a ride. They take our money, they divide it amongst themselves. They pay, hundreds of thousands of pounds to these useless middle management executives who couldn't organise a booze up in a brewery, that screw up these scandals that they have time and time again. Pedo scandal after pedo scandal that they cannot handle. They pay themselves enormous salaries. They give people like Scott Mills a disc player. Here's another pop record, £360,000 a year and a £162,000 pension. We're being taken for a ride by our state broadcaster, don't you think? 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to the show and let's go up to Doncaster now. The Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, is the MP for Doncaster North. Now, all over the country, all of us going, this madman, he's driving this country into the ground with his insane nut zero policies, particularly with a view to the Middle Eastern war. He's mad. What are you doing? We just watch helplessly as this insane lunatic ruins the country with his mad policies that are destroying our economy. So you think around the country, but you might think in his own constituency, Doncaster North, that perhaps they might support him. No. They're the same as the rest of them. Next time, I hope they don't vote for him because they are furious about this. Let's talk to former Conservative MP for Doncaster Valley, which is now Doncaster East, so he knows the area. Nick Fletcher. Welcome, Nick. The people of Doncaster are like the rest of us, bemused by this madman's policies. He sees the Middle Eastern oil shortage, the crisis, the Iranian war crisis. We say, well, you've got to lighten up here, mate. You've got to start drilling. You've got to start drilling North Sea oil and gas, maybe even frack, because we haven't got time to virtue signal about saving the world right now. People are hurting. We need policies that will bring energy prices down. No. Ed says, no, this is the time to double down on my clean energy policies, which, by the way, have given us the highest energy prices in the world. So it's interesting that that even in his own constituency, people are sick to death with this lunacy. It's madness, isn't it, Nick?
It is. I mean, energy policy should be about security and affordability, not ideology. And unfortunately, Ed Miliband, that's all he actually thinks about is net zero ideology, while the rest of us suffer. And this is what happens when you have MPs that are not from the area, they don't live in the area. He's only ever a visitor to Doncaster. He's not lived here like I have for the last 52 years. So he's completely out of touch with the people that he represents, and he's completely out of touch with the businesses that are really, really struggling under these energy policies. And the problem is, with all these businesses, they've got two things they can do. They can either close, which means massive redundancies, or they have to put the prices up, which once again hits the people that he's meant to serve. So no, he has to rethink all this. He has to rethink it quickly. He's right in the fact that if we opened up the North Sea reserve right now, it wouldn't have, we wouldn't be able to do it right now, but it would take time for this to filter through. But as
you've got to start somewhere. You've got to start somewhere, Nick. And
yes, it's exactly that. They say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is now. And that's
exactly right. We should. Let's have a reminder of this man's madness. This is Ed droning on about clean energy.
We published the levelised cost analysis, which showed that new renewables were much cheaper to build and operate. But I have to say, Mr. Speaker, as gas prices are soaring across the world and hitting us here at home, the idea that the party opposite still opposes our renewable auction, which gives us clean, homegrown power that we can rely on, is absolute nonsense.
I'll tell you what's absolute nonsense, Nick, is Ed Miliband and indeed the Prime Minister's contention that if we build enough windmills and enough solar panels, then we can power this country, Great Britain, entirely by renewables, by wind power and sun power. We can't. We know that. This is a fact. And yet, Ed Miliband says now, and the Prime Minister said it this morning, we've got to double down on this, get to the point. where we are no longer relying on fossil fuels. We will always have to rely on fossil fuels. They can't get away. Ed Miliband can't get away, surely, for much longer, telling us barefaced scientific lies.
It's exactly what I said earlier. He's completely out of touch. The wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine all the time. So he comes back to the nuclear, saying nuclear is the answer. But nuclear has its own issues, and obviously we can be decades away from bringing nuclear back on board. So we have to address the issue that we've got now. And even though all this oil goes onto the global market, the more supply that we have to the global market and the more supply we have from stable countries like the UK, or stable countries like the UK under a good government, then the lower the prices go and the better security we have for it, and we wouldn't be in this mess. So we've got to open up these licenses, and we've got to make it so that businesses can thrive. We're taxing every business to death. We're literally taxing every business to death, and so we have to stop that. And we have to make sure that we can get the oil out of the ground and we can all have decent energy prices.
Now, Nick, you hail from the Doncaster area where the people are down-to-earth, common-sense people. And they voted in, the Doncaster North people, they voted in Ed Miliband. I'm sure it's a solid Labour area and all that. But boy, oh boy, they must have buyer's regret. Being sensible, down-to-earth people, the people of your area must be incensed by this man who's supposed to represent them in Parliament. Everything he does goes against the interests of the people of Doncaster, not to mention the rest of us in this benighted country.
And they always have. Doncaster's been represented by Labour for such a long time. They've took the vote for granted. We've always had MPs up here who don't care about the people they represent. They only ever care about their careers down in Westminster. And just look at the people that we've had represent us over the last 50 years. They've all had high-flying jobs within the Labour Party. And this is what's happened. They've taken the vote for granted, but no longer. Ed Miliband knows that his time is over as a Member of Parliament after this election. But the problem is, again, he will not have to stay around in Doncaster. He won't have to stay around and take any of the grief that is from the people that is created over the years. That won't happen. No, he'll just go straight back down to London, and that'll be it. He'll forget the people of Doncaster. And this is why it's so important when people do vote, that they vote for local people who actually know the area and care, and who are going to be around whether they're in Parliament or not. But unfortunately, there's too many people put a cross in the Labour box, and this is what we've ended up with. But no more. The people of Doncaster will speak at the next election.
You reckon, Nick, that he'll lose?
Oh, that's it. It's over, and he knows it is, which is why I think he's doubling down on this now. I think he's got nothing to lose. What's the point? I can't turn this around. It's over. He knows he is. It knows it is, and I'm afraid. Well, I'm not afraid. I'll be pleased to see the back of him, and so will most of the people in Doncaster.
So will everybody in the entire country, Nick. I'll tell you, Nick. It's really good to talk to you. Come on again soon. Nick Fletcher, there, former Conservative MP for Doncaster Valley, now Doncaster East. Ed Miliband, the MP for a very safe Labour seat, as a lot of cabinet secretaries tend to be. Doncaster North, Nick Fletcher saying that the people of Doncaster will reject him, will vote Ed Miliband out at the next election because he does not represent their interests, doesn't represent any of our interests. The only thing he cares about is his own virtue signalling, polishing his halo, saying, look at me, I've got all these policies that are going to save the world. No, they're not. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. The man is insane. He's ruining this country. Prime Minister saying the same things. Well, renewables are the future. We cannot survive on renewables. We need fossil fuels. Windmills and solar panels can never power this country. They are selling us a lie, folks. 03444991000. Next up, Sun Sport with Mike Hampstead. Stick around.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Mike Amstead from Sun Sport is in the studio, sport head of content at that great paper. We're going to talk through some of the stories that will be on the back pages of that great newspaper tomorrow. Mike, something caught my eye, though. Of course, last night Japan beat England at Wembley. Not exactly what we were looking for. Only a friendly, of course, but still not a good result. We shouldn't have done that. It's the first time Japan have ever beaten us at Wembley. So they took England to the cleaners, and then their fans cleaned the stadium. Look at this. This is amazing. So there were a small coterie of Japanese fans cheering on their victorious team, and then afterwards, look at them. They went round their entire area. They all had bin bags. Look at them, all collecting their own rubbish and tidying up that part of the stadium. Now, I'm a big supporter of England fans, but I bet they weren't cleaning up their bit of the stadium. I mean, this is extraordinary.
I thought you were going to say you're a big supporter of tidying up, Kev. Aren't they putting the broken, shattered dreams of England fans of the World Cup in bags?
Just rubbing it in, aren't they?
Exactly. I mean, that's brilliant, though. I mean, look,
look at it. That's amazing.
It's just a classy way of finishing. We've seen them do this before at World Cup games, and we know the players and staff do it in the dressing room. But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, you've seen the state of some of these stadiums once fans are finished, with drinks everywhere and
I'm no slouch myself.
Exactly. So yeah, they've put us to shame on a number of levels there last night, the Japanese.
They certainly did, and it's apparently very important to a Japanese culture. Tidiness is next to godliness, so interesting stuff. Meanwhile, despite our defeat last night, 48 teams for the World Cup are now confirmed. So we know the full summer lineup for North America. Italy didn't make it, right?
Italy didn't make it, yeah, 48 teams. I mean, when you look at some of these teams at the World Cup, and I'm including European teams in this because obviously everyone's coming from their continents, Italy have really done quite well not to qualify for the World Cup. Lost on penalties to Bosnia last night.
Third time in a row. What's going on with it?
I know, it's a shambles. I mean, look, they're four-time winners. This is football heritage, as Jose Mourinho would say. They are up there with the best, and they could rightly boast. But I mean, yeah, they haven't got there in the last three. Haven't won a World Cup game since they won it in 2006.
They used to be the team that everyone was frightened of, and apparently they've just put out a statement today. The Italian FA have said, they're ashamed, embarrassed, and they have launched a full reset of Italian football with a view to getting their national team back to World Cup standards.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be like this. Look, the Serie A has sort of taken a tumble in recent years. Obviously, we've been used to the likes of Juventus, AC Milan, Inter Milan being pretty punchy in Europe. That's not really the case anymore. The international team hasn't really got any superstars. Probably the most well-known player is probably Donnarumma, the goalkeeper, who's in Man City. When you star players, the goalkeeper, does that say something? Tonali, obviously at Newcastle, is a good player in the Premier League, but can't do much to save them. So yeah, I mean, in a way, it's a shame because they are part of our fabric of the World Cup, and in many ways we want there because the passion Italy bring and our nostalgia.
We always look forward to their fouls as well. They're a very nice, dirty team.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
like
Bastoni last night, who's the guy who got sent off, is copping a whole load of abuse because he was sent off with Italy 1-up, but he was already in a load of trouble with the fans. Because basically he kind of like got someone sent off in Serie A recently by conning them into a yellow card and then wildly celebrated it. So basically he was kind of like a pantomime villain back home already, and then he's gone and done this. So he's copping a whole load of abuse, but the whole team is getting it. And like you say, they badly need a reset over there.
Let's talk about Chelsea. Of course, we've got the FA Cup quarterfinals on Saturday, haven't we?
Yeah, this weekend.
And Chelsea have got, I mean, they must fancy their chances, but you never know with Chelsea. They're playing Port Vale. And perhaps the Blues' performance might be affected by the fact that the club lost £262.4 million last season on their financial tightrope. What's going on there?
I mean, Chelsea aren't finishing top of the Premier League anytime soon, but what they are, without a doubt, pound for pound, they are finishing #1 in the financial league, and that's not a good thing. So record loss 262 million. This is linked to them recently getting away with a sort of hefty PSR charge. They've just managed to do it because it's done over a 3-year period. These figures are for the 2024-25 season. The 2 previous seasons, they sold off the women's team, they sold off 2 hotels, so they managed to claw a load of money back, and it's judged over a 3-year period. But you can't keep doing this over and over again. The owners are confident they will start making money going forward. If they don't get in the Champions League, which is obviously a serious worry at the moment under Liam Senior, that is clearly going to have a financial hit. So they are doing it. They're also top of the agents' payment list, which is also out today. This is nothing to be proud of as a Chelsea fan.
Go to Stamford Bridge. They've got loads of it.
Exactly, nothing to be proud of as a Stamford fan. But the numbers here are staggering. So they spent £65.1 million on agents in the last 2 transfer windows. £65 million. Put this into context, the second place team were Aston Villa on 38.4 million.
Man, that's
that just
ridiculous.
shows you how much they're spending. So it feels like it's wildly out of control. Chelsea tell us it's not, and they're turning the boat around, but there's a lot of work to do.
It certainly is. So you go the FA Cup quarterfinals, Manchester City, Liverpool, that's intriguing. Chelsea, Port Vale, also intriguing. Southampton, Arsenal, and then on Sunday, of course, West Ham, Leeds United. So all that to be decided over the weekend. We'll probably talk about that before your lot playing Leeds United. So that'll be Leeds straight through to the semi-finals. Big thanks to West Ham fan Mike.
Not even the biggest West Ham Leeds game this season. If you look at the final day of the Premier League season, that may be more important.
Interesting stuff. Mike, great stuff. Thanks for coming in. Mike Amstad there from The Sun. When we come back, Mark Littlewood with all the big stories of the day. Stay tuned.
Fancy returning to the front line as Foreign Secretary?
I am going to return. I am going to return. To the people from whence I came.
Hello, I'm Peter Mandelson, and I'm proud to serve as His Majesty's British Ambassador to the United States of America.
I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Mandy's out 4 decades and 3 scandals, or 3 that we know about. Guess what? Number 10 knew all about it. They knew that he lived in Jeffrey Epstein's flat.
Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party late last night over the allegation of a $75,000 set of payments to him from Epstein while he was business secretary, $10,000 to his now husband, a photo of him in his pants. This isn't just bad form. There are strong arguments here for him to be facing investigation over misconduct in public office.
I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Breaking news that Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt. This is the establishment, the British establishment on trial. Came to us around about 5 o'clock when we learned that we saw footage of Peter Mandelson being led out of his London home in very exclusive Regent's Park by 3 coppers.
Now we have all these allegations, we have all the documentation related to those allegations, which Downing Street is being forced to put out. The first tranche of it will be early next month.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In a little while, we're going to find out what the hell has happened to Samba, the giant rat that escaped from a Hampshire zoo 2 weeks ago and is still on the run. It's an escape artist, and people keep spotting it, but they can't. It's called a capybara or something, and they're big rats. They're the biggest rodents in the world. Samba escaped with her sister, Tango. Tango was caught pretty sharpish, but Samba remains at large, and people keep seeing it on the banks of the River Itchen, which is the local river down there, having the time of his life, really enjoying himself, you know, chucking sticks into the water, swimming around. He's having a great time. Nobody can catch him, though. We'll try and find out a little bit about capybaras, the biggest rodents in the world, and why it is that Samba is proving so elusive. So that in a little while. Let's go back to the big stories of the day, and let's be joined by the Director of Popular Conservatism, Mark Littlewood. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Hey, Kev, great to be with you.
Now, let's talk about the BBC. Let's talk about Scott Mills. First of all, let's go through the chronology. Until around about this time yesterday, actually, my big question was, did the BBC know about this historical, serious sex allegation against Scott Mills involving an underage boy? Did they know about this before they gave him the top job at Radio 2? Did they know about the police investigation? My guess was, no, they couldn't have done. They couldn't have done. They must have recently found this out and therefore decided he had to go. Bearing in mind that he was investigated for alleged historical serious sex offences against an underage boy allegedly committed back in the late 90s when Scott was in his 20s, and this his alleged victim was under 16 years of old, so it was a paedophile offence, allegedly. Scott Mills, of course, denies this, has denied it to police all along. So I assumed the BBC didn't know about that. Then we found out that he was interviewed 7 years ago, 2018, by the police in a historical investigation into this alleged serious sexual offence. And that interview led to nothing, that the police in the end abandoned the investigation with the police and the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, deciding there's not enough evidence to convict this guy. So the whole case was dropped. End of story. Something has happened in the last couple of weeks to change the picture at the BBC. Now, my assumption was, until yesterday, BBC didn't know about this until something happened in the last couple of weeks for them to find out. But no, incredibly, it turns out that Scott Mills, I suppose to his credit, 7 years ago when he was called in by the cops to be interviewed under caution, went to his bosses at the BBC and said, this is happening. So he fessed up. They let him carry on as a Radio 1 presenter, and then went on to promote him to their ultimate job in radio, the job of host of Radio 2's breakfast show, biggest show in national radio, 7 million listeners. So that's the chronology. But we found out yesterday, and indeed if you want to read the Sun newspaper today, there it is all over the front page, that they knew 7 years ago. 7 years ago, the BBC knew that he was being interviewed. And suddenly they sack him on Monday. Well, they kicked him out last Tuesday. They sacked him somewhere early on Monday for an offence that allegedly happened 25 years ago, that never came to prosecution or conviction, but was revived 7 years ago, but they knew about it. So why do you think, Mark, given that they knew about the history of this, that suddenly they fired Scott Mills for this, something to do with this incident this Monday?
Well, I mean, Kevin,
what another BBC mess and
yeah, I want to come on to that in a minute.
I mean, it's just incredible, isn't it? Because I think that the BBC need to be completely straight with the public about what they have fired him for. Okay, why has he been dismissed? And as you rightly said, with all of those caveats, Kevin, okay, he was subject to a police investigation, but he was never charged. It may well be his position that he is wholly innocent and all of this was totally fabricated. I don't know, but if that is his position, okay, it's not obvious to me that you should be fired from a job because there is a criminal inquiry into you, if indeed you're entirely innocent. So the BBC are now saying that there is new information which came to light. Also, to add to your chronology, I think they accept that last year they were emailed by a journalist with new information which they should have acted on and didn't.
Yes.
Got an email inbox somewhere. So the BBC, I think, need to say, well, what were the grounds for his dismissal? He's not been charged or convicted of any criminal offence. I'm not even sure he was arrested, right? So what is it they have fired him for? And they keep saying, well, we can't really tell you. It's all very sensitive, but new information came to light. This is a public broadcaster that uses our money to hire presenters like Scott Mills, and I think, therefore, they owe to the licence fee payer an explanation of the grounds upon which he was fired.
Totally right. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. The problem here is that, so, you know, we could go around the houses forever about exactly what has happened in the last couple of weeks and this long-running saga of the alleged serious sexual offences against a minor 25 years ago. But the real story for people like us, Mark, and I think every licence fee payer in the country, is the way the BBC has yet again, once again, utterly, disgracefully, abysmally mishandled this situation. Now, after Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Stuart Hall and Hugh Edwards, you'd think by now the BBC might be rather expert at how to handle paedophile scandals, because it seems to have so many of them, but still the Scott Mills saga has proved to us it still has no idea that their incompetence and their lack of transparency in handling this murky situation, frankly, is a scandal in itself.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And the bit which I cannot understand how the BBC, because any employer, put aside that they're the publicly funded state broadcaster, any employer must be able to get this right, that very probably in a good number of areas of work, if you're charged or convicted of a criminal offence, that's probably enough. You're going to be shown the door, right? But supposing that there is evidence that speaks to that, but that doesn't actually come up to a criminal burden of proof, nevertheless, certainly for a television station, your top talents have a pretty strict code of conduct that they must abide by. So bringing the BBC into disrepute, for example, is not a criminal offence, but it could end your contract, right? You have to do more than simply abide by the law and not go to jail in order to be on the BBC payroll certainly as a front of house presenter. So they don't seem to have understood or have clocked that what their standards are that are different to and should be a higher standard than merely you haven't broken the law, you haven't been charged, you haven't gone to prison. Actually, we should expect of BBC presenters, actually of people front of house, I would think, across the media, a higher standard of behaviour than that. So what is that standard of behaviour and what has Scott Mills breached? The BBC are utterly silent on this. So to my mind, Kevin, putting the pieces together, it basically smells of panic, right? Yet another line of inquiry was put before them. They failed to investigate this. They've now accepted that they received some information in 2025 that they sat on or lost or was squirreled away somewhere. And therefore, suddenly, because of that recent back catalogue that you listed, Kevin, they've suddenly decided, oh my God, act now, guillotine him now. And the explanation as to precisely what he's done wrong, exactly what parts of his contract has he broken, to what extent, if any, has he brought the corporation into disrepute, has just been left silent. So I actually think them removing him has actually raised more questions than it's answered for the BBC.
Yeah, the initial statement to staff shocked staff on Monday. Apparently there were audible gasps of horror when they heard that this key player in the BBC game, I mean, this is one of the top roles in all of the BBC, the most listened to radio station in the country, 7, radio show Radio 2 breakfast show, 7 million listeners. Audible gasps of shock when it was announced, and the staff were told he's leaving due to personal conduct issues. You wouldn't expect me to say anything more at this point. Yes, we would expect you to say more. When are they going to get it through their heads? It is this lack of transparency. I don't expect the BBC to give us spit and comma on every detail of this, but they should tell the public, the people who pay their wages, licence fee payers, right now, what is it that has resulted in this key guy who got 160 grand a year? What is it that has resulted in his sudden summary dismissal? They need to tell us, because their lack of transparency has once again caused a scene of chaos, created a vacuum into which wild speculation is falling. This is just as bad as the shambles with Hugh Edwards, the shambles with Jimmy Savile, the shambles with Stuart Hall and Rolf Harris. Here we go again. When are this lot ever going to learn?
Yeah, well, quite. And the answer to that question that invites itself is they are never going to learn, isn't it, Kevin? I mean, you would have thought with their recent history they would have put this into place. I mean, I assume, I can't speak for the BBC HR department, but I would assume that if you are a very senior, high-earning, front of house, directly speaking to the viewers at the BBC, viewers or listeners, that you should have in your contract clearly spelled out the grounds on which it can be terminated, which could be well short of any criminal offence, right? It could just be that you brought the organisation into disrepute, your face no longer fits, but it should be there in black and white. And the contract should also insist that the corporation will explain to its audience why you've been dismissed, if you're above a certain level of pay or a familiar face or voice to viewers and listeners. You don't necessarily need to apply that to the deputy cameraman or the assistant sound engineer, but certainly to big talent. I think he was earning the best part of £400,000.
Yeah, £360,000 a year, which is another thing I want to discuss with you. You know, I don't denigrate the difficulty in running a big show like that and appealing to 7 million listeners. That's a difficult job. It's not easy. It deserves a decent salary. But basically, it's playing pop records. You know, have a listen to this one, the latest from Harry Styles. Hope you like it. Oh, it's a lovely day, isn't it? Let me have a friendly chat with the newsreader. Ho, ho, ho. Oh, it's Easter. Let's try some Easter eggs. 360 grand a year. Is it worth it? And worse than that, if you like, we've just learned today that whatever the reason for his sudden departure with the BBC, Scott Mills is in for a pension of £162,000 a year. My contention is this, Mark. These bandits at the BBC, they take our money, 175 quid a year, and believe that that gives them the right to keep secrets from us. It damn well does not, quite the opposite. And then they take all this money, 3.5 billion quid a year, and they divide it among themselves and pay themselves ludicrous salaries, pretending that if they didn't, they'd be poached by the private sector. It's a massive, great con.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I think for as long as we've got the licence fee, which I would like to see abolished, but for as long as we've got it, if the British public, anyone with a sort of television set that they use, are obliged to pay for this service, then the level of transparency we should expect from the BBC is at a higher level than a private broadcaster, right?
Yeah.
And also to your point, Kevin, I mean, I think if you're going to have some outfit like the BBC, its job shouldn't be to compete with the private sector. They should develop, I don't know, young careers, you know, people just breaking through, and then release them into the private sector. And if talent like Scott Mills can go and earn the best part of 400 grand a year at some private radio station or private TV station in the commercial sector, good. The BBC should be looking to bring on young talent and then release it into the open market, not competing with the open market. That might be some sort of public service in broadcasting, but the idea that they want to retain talent against the private market sector leads to these extraordinarily inflated salaries that I think most people who are still paying the licence fee will completely scratch their head about. If he can earn that money in the private sector, let him earn it, but it would be much better for the BBC to say, look, we're the sort of place where you're never going to earn more than £100,000 a year as a presenter. But if you do it really well, you might find that the commercial sector pick you up and you're really valuable. That should be its basic approach, I think, to talent, not to try and keep the talent off the open commercial market.
Yeah, and don't tell the licence fee payers, but this is a con. Scott Mills, I think his career prospects might be rather limited going forward. However, if he did go to do a similar job to what he's been doing for the public broadcaster in the private sector, there's no way in the world he'd get anything like £360,000 a year. And don't forget, until a couple of years ago, for the same job, Zoe Ball was earning a grotesque, an obscene £980,000 a year. We're being taken for a ride by our public broadcaster, and something has got to change. Let's hope that the new Director General recognises that this organisation is going to hell in a handcart unless they really get to grips with everything that's wrong with it, and a lot is wrong with the BBC. Before you go, Mark, should have got to this a bit earlier, but we do need to sort the beeb out. The Prime Minister this morning addressed the nation. We didn't ask him to, but he decided to go all Churchillian on us, and among us, a load of old garbage about basically rejoining the EU, or in all but name. He parroted Ed Miliband, crazy Ed Miliband, by saying, oh, our future is with renewables, solar panel energy, windmill energy. This government has got to be prevailed upon to stop this nonsense, because we all know scientifically this country will always need fossil fuels. Ed Miliband, mad Miliband, crazy Ed, is selling us a lie, an absolute lie, and the Prime Minister doubled down on that today in his useless, pathetic address to the nation, our pound store PM. Well, Ed has just been speaking to ITV, and he's off again. Crazy Ed, take it away.
What I'm interested in, Harry, is tackling the cost of living crisis that people are facing, and there is only one way to do that, and that is to get off these fossil fuels onto clean homegrown energy we control.
It would raise more in taxes, and you could use that money to accelerate.
Well, we are raising more in taxes through the windfall tax, something the Conservatives want, something the Conservatives actually oppose. So I don't think that makes any sense at all, what they're saying. And look, there is a truth here, which is, unfortunately, the North Sea is a declining basin. It's fallen by 75% production since the turn of the millennium. Those people who say new exploration licenses, which is the issue people are talking about, will somehow create huge amounts of energy for us. I mean, they're just wrong, and that's not what the independent...
It isn't wrong, Mark. 25% of the North Sea oil and gas fields is still an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of money. So that is a lie, and it is a lie to say that this country can ever survive without fossil fuels. Yep. This guy is lying to us. He is saying that at this very precarious time, due to the Iranian war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the impending massive oil shortage, he's saying now is not the time to loosen up. Now is the time to double down on my green energy policy. No, it isn't. We've got to start drilling again. We've got to start fracking. We've got to stop buying energy from other countries and using our own energy sources, because our energy prices are the highest in the world, and this madman is going to ruin our economy. He's halfway there already. We are in the hands of a lunatic.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely maddening, this policy, right? So, look, I'm open to anyone who thinks that they've got some wacky new way of generating energy. I don't really care whether it's a windmill or tangerine juice or anything. You bring it to market and you compete on the open market with it, right? And we've basically got a choice here. You can either have cheap energy or you can have this insane carbon net zero target, but you cannot have both. So if Ed Miliband thinks he's got some piece of technology that is cheaper, better, faster, more reliable than fossil fuels, he should cease being the energy secretary. He should simply set up Miliband Energy Limited and bring it to market and see if people will buy it. But all of the stuff that he's trying to sell, he's actually leaning into with government subsidies. So he's breaking the market rather than allowing a market. And all of the evidence so far is this stuff is not as good as fossil fuels. So I am absolutely with you. We have petroleum companies saying they want a license to go and get this out of the North Sea. So they've made a judgment that it is a viable economic project. I think the same goes for fracking and shale gas. We had companies lining up to say we'd like to invest in it. And we need to get back to actually having a market in energy. And if people think they can come up with some wild new technology that completely changes the way that energy is delivered in the UK and abroad, good luck. But that's the role of an entrepreneur, not the role of a politician. I want a competitive energy market in which we get cheap energy delivered to people so the cost of living comes down. And I want us to be neutral about what those type of energy sources are. Miliband is not neutral, he's biased.
Exactly right. And just a final facile point, I'm good at these. Looking at that guy, watching that interview there on ITV, he has the bog-eyed certitude of an utter lunatic. He looks like a madman. He talks like an evangelical, insane, deranged fool. There's something about this guy that he's just wrong. He should not be doing this job.
Well, you've got to understand, Kevin, that the climate change zealotry is not really politics, it's a religion. So those who are preaching it tend to come across, I'm afraid, rather swivel-eyed, rather than actually having any pragmatic, sensible, properly costed plans in their top pocket. That's what I want from my politicians, not this sort of ludicrous drive that even if we got to carbon net zero would have absolutely no impact whatsoever on the global environment. It is a zealous religion, not a sensible economic or political.
And it's bankrupting this country at a very difficult time. Listen, Mark, we've run over time, but I'm going to hang on to you if you don't mind to get your very swift reaction to this. One of the strange elements of the drama surrounding Scott Mills is ever since he was booted out last Tuesday and sacked on Monday, not a word from him or any of his representatives. Why the wall of silence? We've all been wondering. Well, guess what? While we were talking, he's finally issued a statement. So I'm going to read it out and get your reaction. I have no idea what's in it, by the way. This is what Scott Mills has just issued a statement. It says this. This is him talking. The recent announcement that I am no longer contracted to the BBC has led to the publication of rumour and speculation. In response to this, the Metropolitan Police has made a statement which I confirm relates to me. An allegation was made against me in 2016 of a historical sexual offence, which was the subject of a police investigation in which I fully cooperated and responded to in 2018. As the police have stated, a file of evidence was submitted to the Crown Prosecution Service, which determined that the evidential threshold had not been met to bring charges. Since the investigation related to an allegation that dates back nearly 30 years and the police investigation was closed 7 years ago, I hope that the public and the media will understand and respect my wish not to make any further public comment on this matter. I wish to thank from the bottom of my heart all those who have reached out to me with kindness, my former colleagues and my beloved listeners who I greatly miss. Well, I've just gleaned all of that myself. I would say my initial reaction to that is if you're at the BBC, stand by for a lawsuit.
Yes, it's interesting he hasn't said this, but he might say it in the follow-up. He has said, obviously, which we know to be true, that it didn't meet the threshold for criminal charges being brought forward. He hasn't said in that statement, but he might want to at a later date, that he's wholly innocent of any of these charges. And he hasn't made it plain that he's going to sue for wrongful dismissal. So again, it's all smoke and mirrors, isn't it, Kevin? Yeah. We don't exactly know why he's been fired. He presumably does. And if he believes he's been wrongly dismissed, then he should, at some point, if not in that statement, which he hasn't said it, but in a statement shortly, be very plain that he's going to take legal action. I would have also, if I was his advisor rather than his lawyer, be very clear that what you say about these alleged incidents, are you wholly innocent of all of these charges? Are they completely fabricated or whatever? He was just slightly relying on time there and the fact that it didn't reach a threshold. I think he probably needs to be a bit clearer about that. and a bit clearer about whether he's going to take legal action about the corporation. So that reads to me like a holding statement rather than a final.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. That's a much better analysis than mine was. There is no straight-up denial of any of this. Yeah, it's a holding statement. You're quite right. Mark, thank you for helping me out on that, and thank you for the last nearly half an hour. Excellent stuff from Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism. Next up, we're going to talk about Samba, the capybara, the giant rat who's still on the loose after 2 weeks in Hampshire, with Dominic Dyer. So we'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about Samba. She is the capybara. This is the capybara, the world's largest rodents. I think they're about that big, something like that. Samba and her sister Tango escaped from Marwell Zoo near Winchester in Hampshire 2 weeks ago. Tango was swiftly recaptured, but Samba remains elusive despite copious sightings. She's having the time of her life, enjoying herself on the banks of the River Itchen down there. Despite copious sightings, the use of sniffer dogs, thermal drones, camera traps, Samba has proven particularly adept at avoiding detection. Why is Samba so elusive? The pictures that we have seen of her, she seems to be having a very good time. Let's talk to animal welfare campaigner Dominic Dyer. Hi, Dominic, long time.
Hello, Kevin. It's good to speak to you again.
You too. What do you know about capybaras? They're the world's biggest rodents, right? They hail from South America, but this one seems to be adapting to the British environment very nicely.
Yeah, I'm in St James's Park. It's not turned up here yet. She's obviously very elusive. She could turn up in London at this rate. Who knows? They can travel, very quickly at about 22 miles an hour. And they can stay underwater for 5 minutes, so they're great swimmers as well. They've obviously deployed dogs, they've used drones, they've used heat-seeking equipment to try and find her. She's not fully grown, so she's relatively small for a capybara. They grow much larger than this as adults. But she could live out there for, quite comfortably in the British countryside. I'm sure she's probably quite enjoying herself unless they can capture her.
Yeah, some of the pictures show that Samba, as like we're looking at now, is having the time of her life on the banks of the River Itchen, really enjoying herself. Some people have said, well, it's really nice for Samba because Samba clearly knows how to feed herself. You've got fresh food there. She's going swimming in the river, fresh food, and this could be very healthy for her because in the zoo they tend to get sort of processed pellets and all that. So maybe good news for Samba's welfare.
It could be two things, really. We want to make sure, obviously, that she's safe out there in the wild. So I think anyone who's got dogs, by the riverbank needs to keep them on a lead. There could be a danger a dog could attack. Also, we've got a growing problem, Kevin, with young people using high-powered catapults to attack wildlife. Swans, deer, foxes, is a horrible business. I hope nothing like that will happen to this animal. I know there are some sick individuals out there that might see an opportunity because it's become famous worldwide to harm it. Let's hope that doesn't happen. If it is captured, I hope it can be returned and live safely in Marwell Zoo with its sister. But yes, it's a funny story. It's an engaging story. It's a beautiful animal, but let's hope it comes to no harm.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If anybody sees it, I mean, the other thing we should tell the public is, it looks very cute, lovely little thing, but be careful. They're not necessarily, they're not domestic pets, are they, capybaras?
No, they're not. And, any animal that's cornered could attack or bite, so you've got to be cautious, particularly when there's young children, things like that around. The chances are some angler's going to maybe see it or someone's going to come across it soon, and I think it probably will be captured safely and taken back to Marwell. But I think everyone's got to just be, alert and cautious and think about the safety of the animal and don't spook it. If they do come across it, they need to sort of let the police know, get the people from the zoo know what they're doing out to capture it safely.
And you said earlier that Samba is not fully grown. How big can these giant rodents grow?
They can grow to over 30 kilos in size. So this is a big animal. They are the biggest rodents in the world. So, this thing, when it was fully grown, would definitely get your attention, to be quite honest, in the British countryside. At the moment, I think it's only about a third of what size it would be if it was a fully grown adult.
And what kind of length are we talking about? 3 feet or something?
You could be talking around sort of, about 1.5 meters.
Wow, a metre and a half.
Yeah, it's a big animal. So, this is much bigger than a badger, for example, probably twice the size of a big male boar badger. They can grow to a fair size. So, yeah, it's a pretty impressive animal. Not something we'd be used to seeing in the British countryside. If its sister was out there were others that, but, it's funny how animals can breed. Obviously mink escaped from fur farms, have done very well in the UK countryside. We've got wallabies out there that have escaped from zoos over the years, that have now set up, in different parts of the country and doing very well for themselves. So animals can survive in our countryside like this. This one's on its own. It can't breed, of course. So at some point, I hope it will be found and it will be returned safely to captivity. But in the meantime, let's hope it enjoys itself in safety.
Absolutely. What do they feed on, Dominic?
Well, it'll just feed on vegetation, so there's plenty for it to eat on the riverbank. You can see this one there just grazing on the grass. So they're not meat eaters, so it'd be quite happy just to feed on whatever vegetation it can find. Springtime in Britain, there'll be plenty of food for it to find and forage and eat.
Well, that's good news. So the message is to any of you, if you do see Samba, be careful, because Samba's a wild animal. You could get in trouble yourself, and don't harm her. Leave her alone, report her to the authorities, and let's get her back into safety. It's a lovely story, but there are serious edges to it. And it's really good to talk to you again, Dominic. All the best, mate. Good to have you on the show. Dominic Dyer there, animal welfare campaigner. Capybara, Samba, as I say, be careful if you see her. She's having a good time, but these stories can turn sour, and we don't want that to happen. Cute looking, but potentially dangerous, might attack you. And do not attack her. Leave her alone. Just report her to the RSPCA or to Marwell Zoo. Huge people, forces have been out there. Half of the national newspapers have sent feature writers down to join the search. As I say, sniffer dogs, thermal drones, camera traps. I still can't find Samba. So the search for Samba continues apace. We will keep you updated with that important story. I think it is an important story, seriously. Right, let's go to break, and when we come back, we'll go through the stories that are going to appear in the front pages of The Sun with Deputy Head of News at that newspaper, Will Barker. That next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Will Barker, Deputy Head of News at The Sun, is in the studio. And Will, you just amended your list that you were going to give me because Scott Mills has, after, what is it now, 2.5 days of total silence, mysterious silence. People say, well, not a word from him, not a word from any of his representatives, lawyers, publicists, nobody, not a word. Well, he's finally spoken. I'm going to remind you of what he said, and then Will and I will see if we can work out what it all means. This is what Scott Mills said. I already read this, but it's worth reading again. The recent announcement that I am no longer contracted to the BBC has led to the publication of rumour and speculation. In response, by the way, blame the BBC for that. In response to this, the Metropolitan Police has made a statement which I confirm relates to me. An allegation was made against me in 2016 of historic sexual offence, which was the subject of a police investigation in which I fully cooperated and responded to in 2018. As the police have stated, a file of evidence was submitted to the Crown Prosecution Service, which determined that the evidential threshold had not been met to bring charges. Since the investigation related to an allegation that dates back nearly 30 years and the police investigation was closed 7 years ago, I hope that the public and the media will understand and respect my wish not to make any further public comment on this matter. I wish to thank from the bottom of my heart all those who have reached out to me with kindness, my former colleagues and my beloved listeners who I greatly miss. Well, it's a strange statement because there's no, you would expect normally in these circumstances, you know, I utterly deny any wrongdoing, you know, a protestation of innocence.
Yes.
That isn't in there.
Yes. And as he mentions, there's been speculation over the last few days. We've heard lots of things about him. We've been putting all these things to the agent, as we have to do. We have to get everybody's right to reply and when we make claims. And the agents just are literally pulling their hair out because they haven't been able to raise him. Friends have been very concerned about him, and I think that's kind of almost the relevance to this is it's kind of is him saying, yes, it's true, yes, it's me, yes, I'm still here, please leave me alone, kind of thing.
I mean, he says, since the investigation related to an investigation that dates back nearly 30 years and the police investigation was closed 7 years ago, I hope the public and the media will understand and respect my wish not to make any further comment on this matter. Well, we can respect his wish not to make any comments, any further comments, but, you know, just because the allegation dates back nearly 30 years and the investigation was closed 7 years ago, that isn't necessarily a reason not to say something a little bit more meaningful.
No, I mean, the vital was fully cooperated. I mean, it's kind of saying that he did everything he could and then he got found effectively not guilty in the eyes of the CPS. But clearly, as we were discussing before, that clearly the BBC have heard something different and are aware that there's allegations that there was new information presented to them, potentially by the complainant last week, that has changed their view on all of this.
And you're the Sun newspaper, you believe, this is what we're hearing, is that what has triggered this situation is the Hugh Edwards drama on Channel 5 last week, which, by the way, it must have been the pre-publicity to that drama, because Scott Mills's last show was on Tuesday morning, and the Hugh Edwards drama didn't hit the screen until Tuesday night. But the belief is that potentially the victim, or the alleged victim from all those years ago, has been triggered by the Hugh Edwards drama.
Yes, I mean, and we were talking about it for a couple of days before. It was starting to be discussed, and there was that whole thing about, I mean, the name of the drama was Power, and this whole idea of powerful men in the media using younger men, which potentially might have happened in this situation in a very similar way to Hugh. In much of the relationship in the drama wasn't per se illegal, but and maybe the same thing might have happened in this circumstance, we don't know. But the fact he's kind of batted away all this and then effectively said, leave me alone, it doesn't appear like we're going to know imminently.
I think there's a lot more to come out about this. This is it's interesting that he's spoken, but it doesn't exactly clear everything up. And as we keep saying, the BBC have certainly not cleared anything up. They're handling this dreadfully, as they always do. Let's talk about these TikTok riots. They're strange, isn't it? These are link-ups where all these yobs get together, call each other to arms, as it were, on TikTok and Snapchat. Yeah, well, all these kids at home on Easter holidays, all bored, and all sort of congregating in, mainly in Clapham, hanging out and then creating sort of almost riots in there. They're getting. I know somebody who went through this last night and was felt very in Clapham, felt very worried by it, because all these youths in balaclavas, all kind of hidden, running at people. I mean, there were only a couple of arrests handed out, and not much. Yeah, that's the point, isn't it? There were apparently, I was saying thousands there to be. You can see. Apparently, we're talking about 300, but that's a lot of people to be swarming up and down a high street. It's quite an intimate high street in South London. They're storming into shops, as you can see here, helping themselves to whatever the hell they want in the manner of these things. Running around. Apparently they all went over to the nearby Clapham Common and started setting fire to it, building fires everywhere. Now, this requires policing. And what do we find out? By the way, they did it on Saturday, and then they did it last night. Last night, 300 of them storming around, steaming into shops, stealing stuff, terrifying the hell out of members of the public. Shops acting as refuge centres, as families and mums with their kids, terrified, were taken into the shops were barricaded up. This is lawlessness on a mass scale, and the police arrested 3 people. That's not good enough, is it? No. And it's all sort of this social media thing is just spreading this, because what they understand is that more people are putting this out.
then other people sitting at home are coming and joining. It's a kind of classic riot scenario, and they're all kind of steaming down there, and it's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and Mayor of London Sadiq Khan said the appalling scenes in Clapham in recent days are absolutely unacceptable, and those responsible will face the full force of the law. I agree with most of that statement, except for those responsible will face the full force of the law, because they won't. They've already got away with it. The police have got to send a message. You do this, you get arrested. And then you get nicked, you get convicted, you go to prison, whatever. They've got to send a message, otherwise this is going to get worse, and there are big fears it's going to be all over the country. This
well, they're very concerned. Well, they're very concerned about tonight. I mean, they've got all the sort of warnings out there, and so we'll watch this space really, see what happens.
My God. Going nuclear, an MP whose husband was arrested for spying for China was accused of inappropriate behaviour with 2 senior Navy officers. That's intriguing. What's that about?
Well, it is very intriguing.
Joni Reid.
Yeah, it's the story that broke a few weeks ago that a load of Labour advisors or former Labour sort of advisors were arrested in connection with China's spying. And this all came out in the Times this morning. And one of the guys, David Taylor's married to Joni Reid, Scottish MP, and it's now emerged that she's got rather friendly with a couple of senior Navy officers up in Faz Lane at the nuclear place, one of them being a captain of one of the nuclear subs. So questions have now been raised, and the Armed Force Parliamentary Services have had to look into it to see what's been going on.
Yeah, and she got carried away apparently during a drunken night at the officers' mess at the British nuclear base in Fastlane, and she left the Armed Forces parliamentary scheme, so she was in as a sort of parliamentary group. She left that after the alleged incident in Scotland. Interesting story, very Sun story that. Now, a pub has put up most wanted posters seeking the return of its treasured toy badger after a woman stole it. Tell us all about.
Well, this is another quite sudden story, but basically there's an old stuffed badger in a pub in Dorset. It's been there for years.
The Oddfellows Arms.
Yeah, the Oddfellows Arms in Dorset, in Wimborne.
Right.
For the past 35 years, is known as Mr. Badger. Lovely, cuddly little toy.
Yeah.
Until one woman, sort of quite respectable-looking woman, seemingly went and snatched it. She's caught on CCTV.
Yeah.
She's clearly having a good night out, and walked off with it. And they've then sort of done a big investigation and tracked her. And there's a still of her walking around in another.
So police are looking for a woman with a badger.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we'll leave it at that, shall we? No, great story. Great story. Will Barker, Deputy Head of News at The Sun. Thank you very much. That's what's in the papers, the pages of your favourite newspaper tomorrow. When we come back, we will take your calls. 03444991000. I'll read some of your messages, and if there's any WhatsApp voice notes, we'll play them out. So all that's still to come. Stick around.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Here's a voice note from Steve on Keir Starmer.
I'm pretty sure that the Ayatollah Khamenei engineered this row with Donald Trump in order to say, well, we've not got America as partners anymore. We must return to the EU. It's always been his mission. Every single word of their mandate at the last election, Labour's mandate, was a lie. They never intended to keep up to any of it. We will be back in the EU by the end of this parliament, and that's a fact. The guy is a traitor. If I say too much, they won't play my message, that's for sure.
Well done, Steve, but I agree with you. Couldn't agree with you more. Nigel here, his messages, great show. If our government can undo Brexit, then it can do anything, and it will. Time to be scared of what's coming next, because this isn't a democratic country anymore. Looks like we might soon need Trump more than the Iranians. Here, this is that? No, it's not a mess. It's quite good though. This is from someone unnamed. If Scott Mills is getting that much, how much is Zoe Ball getting? £500,000? Talking about Scott Mills' £162,000 pension. Mind-boggling for what? Playing records. The only people worth that much were the late, great Terry Wogan and the current Ken Bruce. Here's another one from Hayley and Carshalton. Seriously, it is just too embarrassing to be British these days, paying the French millions to do nothing. Starmer showing his face, talking nonsense again and again just because he's so ludicrous. I feel like we are all tarred with the same brush. It is not possible to be British and proud anymore, especially as we are the minority in Britain these days. Great show as always. That's from Hayley in Carshalton. Let's go to the phones. Peter Carbo will be in just a little while to tell you what he's got lined up for you from 7 until 10 p.m. But in the meantime, I believe she's got a poem for us, a poem for me. Karen in Bournemouth. So Karen, you're a poet and you don't know it. You got a poem. It's about Starmer. Hit us with it.
It's just a general statement of the way things are.
Okay.
Starmer loves an Islamist. When Labour's gone, he won't be missed. Gay Greens, the trans, when thrown off roofs, will they think, I did an oops? Women and girls won't be allowed to escape or leave their burqa shroud. Rape and tortured, it must be said. I, for one, would rather be dead. Take away our human rights. How do these people sleep at night? As you tick your box, please note, this may be your very last vote.
That's really good, Karen. So I forgot the name of your dog.
Elsa.
So great poem by you, and brilliant contributions from Elsa, as always. What did you think of Starmer's speech today, Karen?
Oh, he's sick.
It's so frustrating, isn't it? He's just lying to us. Who do you think you are, you pathetic little man? I've had enough.
I think part of me is not sure that it's the EU. I think that the EU might be a distraction. I think he's already quite happy for us to be taken over by a complete left-wing Islamist, and
as long as he's in charge, as long as he's at the helm, he'll do anything to hang on to power, Karen. Anything. That's what's going on now. This is part of a campaign for him to try to carry on being Prime Minister, even though he's been totally useless. Karen, great poem. Our thanks to Elsa as always. I've got to move on. Call me again tomorrow. Always good to talk to you. Karen in Bournemouth. Let's finally talk to David in Exeter. You want to talk about Starmer as well, David? What would you like to say?
Hi, Kev. Yeah, he's continuing to play it safe, isn't he? And it's way too risky for that now. I think Bernard Jenkin at Parliamentary Liaison Select Committee had got this absolutely banged to rights with Starmer not being honest with us.
Yeah, he's lying. I mean, he keeps saying, I took the statesman-like decision to keep Britain out of the Middle Eastern war. No, he didn't. He wasn't invited.
Well, it's not a question of not being invited. There's nothing militarily our forces could do anyway, because they're not.
I get that, but if you're not invited to something, no other nation knew about this, the attack on Iran, apart from America and Israel. No one else knew. We didn't know. How can he say he kept us out of the war? He wasn't invited to join it.
Yeah, he's barking up the wrong tree with that one. I mean,
he's lying, is what he's doing.
The point is, Kev, he needs to be honest with the British public now.
Yeah, that'll be the day, David.
Which is going to be the problem, because basically, as I said, Bernard Jenkins had this banter rights, which was he was being absolutely complacent under the circumstances, with numerous adversaries waging war upon us, and he seemed to be happy to continue to mug everyone off as if we were at peace, and we're not.
No, we're not. And he said, "I kept us out of the war." Well, no one's really out of this war. And his latest declaration is that, we've got to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump currently saying he won't help us in that respect. And Keir Starmer's solution: how do we reopen the Strait of Hormuz? Talks. Yeah, great. That's going to work. It's pathetic, David. It is so pathetic. Thank you. Excellent call. I've got to go because the show's nearly over. Call me again very soon. A good call. David in Exeter. Peter Cardwell is in the studio. How you doing, mate?
Very well, thanks. Talks aren't going to help because we were talking to the Iranians for most of the last, 47 years. Diplomacy failed, so you go to the ultimate form of diplomacy, which is